And then I said, Mario, you're goatsy. Oh, there it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
There it is.
I
That's
can't
that's
believe
what you
you.
do. That's how you
I
tell
can't
them.
believe you were in the Mario movie,
I was it literally in the Mario movie. Yeah,
and
that's
I
right.
and you gaped in the Mario movie. That's fucking crazy, babe.
Gaping Dragon, they had a Dark Souls crossover, and I was that character.
I don't
Super
understand
shameless.
anything that's happening right now, just
It's
for the
Red
record.
Planet. That's what's happening, Kira. Don't worry. How is everyone doing? Welcome into the most base show in the world. I was going to say on Twitch, but we're on more platforms than Twitch now, aren't we? We're probably on the
Yeah.
most base platform, base show on Twitch. Sophie, what's the most base thing you did this week?
It's a bit of a little story, but I'm going to tell it. So I was going to a trans community live music event. I think that's pretty based to begin with.
Yep.
So there was a based context of what was going on. And I was walking with this friend of mine, Juno. She's another doll. I bumped into her at the tube station near the place. So like we were like, oh, we'll walk up to the place together. And we were just chatting. And then this guy, this dude, this fella, he made some kind of comment and I didn't hear it, right? And he started laughing. And I was like, huh? And he, because I wanted to hear what he'd said, because I'm sure it was really, really funny.
Obviously.
You love
So,
jokes. Who doesn't?
I do love comedy. So wait, let me back up and describe this guy for a second, because I think you'll enjoy this, Mule.
Important.
So he's got like he's just wearing a t-shirt on top. Big beer belly, right? It's just like a blue t-shirt, like he looks like his mum's dress.
Blue, dark blue. Okay, yeah.
And he's wearing like trackies and socks and slides.
So a really hot guy, like absolutely smoking.
Yeah, he's got the drip. That's essential. But
Yep.
I'm only putting so much into describing his drip so you can understand when I say that he had a mustache with waxed tips.
Okay.
Like fucking Wario, like Wario ass looking dude. Right? And he said something, and then he's like guffawing, and I'm like, what? And he goes, oh, what? Like making fun of me asking what he says, which is rude. I wanted to hear I wanted to hear his very funny joke.
Pretty rude.
And so he starts going, oh, sorry, mate, sorry, bruv, sorry, bro, sorry, mate. But the whole time
he sounds like a really smart, funny guy.
Oh, yeah. So the whole time that he's doing this, he's like backing away from me. So I just started calling him a pussy over and over again. I just started like, pussy, 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 just nonstop, right? And I did neglect to mention until this point, but I will mention now that he was with his wife and 2 young children and walking his dog. So they were all just trying to get away from the situation, right? Like, and he was still trying to walk his dog and walking backwards, trying to face me, going, "Oh, sorry, mate. Oh, sorry, bro." And I was just calling him a pussy. And because he's walking backwards in flip flops, and there was a little speed bump in the road, he fucking tripped over. he fucking tripped over in front of his wife and kids and dog. So I just called him a bitch and left. Like I just went, I just laughed my fucking ass off when he fell over, and I was like, bitch, and then I left. It was
That's
great.
so based.
You mean
That's
the wife and kids
shit.
he has now? Because it sounds like, he might be splintering soon.
They're so proud of him. They so
must
proud
be
of
so
him.
proud of him. Yeah.
Those kids are not going to be scarred by that moment at all. They're not going to be trying to go sleep maybe when they're like 21 or something and like don't speak to him that often, and then they'll wake up at 3 a.m. and they'll go, oh yeah, I remember that time that my dad fell over because he was being transphobic and didn't have the balls to actually admit it. So that's fun.
Yeah.
Wow, that was based.
Yeah, I was pretty happy with it. I made a bigot fall over by calling him a pussy. I've kind of defaulted to calling bigots cowards now because they is the first thing, right?
Yeah.
But also like I think that it's worth pointing out to their faces that like if you are a man who's like, thinking you're being a big man because you're like punching down on minorities, but you aren't like trying to you aren't doing anything to actually like push back on the people who actually like make your life worse. Like, you know these bigots aren't in fucking unions, right?
Yep.
It's like as in that a guy who's harassing a trans woman in the street, he's not in a union. So it's like, that makes you a pussy, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
Yeah.
joining a union means that you're not, you can never be called a pussy again.
It's true. Unless that union is like, I don't know,
the pussy union.
Yeah.
Unless it's the scab union we talked about the other week, actually.
That's what I was thinking.
That is
That's
literally the pussy union, yeah. Pussy Union, my band name. Anyway, Kira, what did you do this week that was based?
Oh, this is, I think, last week, but I wanted to mention it. We raised on my stream over $2,000 for a friend of mine, Soul Bunny. She's a Black trans femme YouTuber, and she makes like pretty great political content. I know that Mules at least watched one of her videos on stream. And so, yeah, we raised over $2,000 for her over a stream so she could get a leg up in actually pursuing her YouTube channel more seriously and not have to worry so much about, trying to fight tooth and nail for, just to wage slave that time away instead. I felt really like privileged to be able to be in that position because it's nice to use the platform that I have, especially as like a white cis person, to be able to like take some of that like privilege and to be able to like do something better with it instead of just like absorbing it,
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
And also just like we need more YouTubers like her, and
she's really good. She's
great.
Really
Yeah, no,
good.
she's already doing she has like 3 videos, I think, right? And they're all great. So like I'm really excited to see where her channel goes. And so yeah, that was awesome. And thank you to everyone in the chat if you were there, even if you like stopped by to lurk, it still helped us. So thank you so much for that.
Awesome.
And so Mule,
really cool.
What about you? What basting did you do this week or so ago?
I basically, I can't really remember what I did the week before this week because that is what my brain is like. But I do remember that this week I decided to not stream for the week, and basically I realized I have ADHD. I find it really hard to do like, everything at once, because I can do everything at once, but I just do all the things very poorly. So what I should do is I should just hyper focus on one thing that I've been meaning to do for a while, which is finish my fucking video that I've been talking about for the last fucking 6 months.
The fancy one, right?
The what?
The fancy one, right?
It is fancy. That's right. Yeah, I've shown Kira a tiny little sneak preview. Sophie's seen it as well. I've spoken about it on the phone with Sophie actually the other day. And I'm really happy with it. I'm actually really, really happy with where it's gone. So that is basically like done now. I just have to spend like another day on it this week, and then everything will be sorted, polished, everything.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, so it actually felt really good, and it was a really weird feeling as well. It was like, I don't know, like I guess I've just been stressed for like the last year or 2 years, just trying to do everything all at once. And then just, yeah, I know, like, you don't really know like that's happening, I guess, when you're trying to do all these things all the time and like, be a really productive guy and shit like that. But, just sort of taking a step back and going, oh, right. Yeah. If I like could just do this, it actually makes me really happy. It's like, yeah, I felt genuine happiness when I was like doing my work, which is pretty fucking rare. Not to say that I like hate streaming or like I hate activism or I hate making YouTube videos at other times, but it's like, I think I just find it a lot more easy to do, and it's I'm actually happy when I'm just doing the one thing at one time, and I can just hyper focus on it and get it done. So yeah, I think it was a base decision to realize my limits, you know what I mean?
Hell yeah.
So that was that.
Poggers.
Yeah,
I love
I need
that.
to stop saying that, but I've noticed I'm saying pog and poggers in real life.
You can say
maybe...
pog. Please stop saying poggers.
It's so fun to say pog and poggers.
When you say poggers, you just have to do it in the Chuck E. Cheese voice from that one time. Yeah, exactly, that one. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
okay,
I'm a poggers expert. Thank you.
We have an extended based section this week. So let me first say, Audience, chatters, listeners, viewers, watchers, observers, lurkers, creeps. We want to know what you're up to. Is it based? You can tell us. What based things have you been doing? You can message us on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, or you can send an email to based@redplanetshow.com, and we might shout it out in a later episode if it's really based and fun and we like it. So we've got one here from Narralon Starfire, or apparently Kira regularly calls him Nair. And Nair says, apart from giving money to a certain streamer, the most base thing I've done this week is my ongoing conversations with my colleagues at the hospital about the systems of oppression that exist all around us and how we can overcome them. When they are discussing the news or complaining about certain problems, I try to help them understand that these issues aren't ones of personal failings, personal responsibility, or personal morality, but are systemic issues relating to capitalism, the patriarchy, racism, transphobia, the exploitation of non-human animals, etc. I try to avoid getting on my soapbox, as it were, or getting too deep in theory too quickly, but instead have a relaxed conversation that will hopefully help them be more receptive to and understanding of these ideas. All the best, Narrowon. And I want to say that's extremely based. Yeah. I also, it reminds me of when we were playing Bewitching Revolution. There's that bit that says to not seek work is a political act, not a personal failing. And I think that it's really useful if you're trying to show people that there's a systemic thing there, not just a personal failure, that you say, what's the implication of you acting this way, right? Because in Bewitching Revolution, it's like, to not seek work is a political act, not a personal failing. It demands a future where work, the absence of work brings leisure, not poverty. So if you say the same thing about like resisting racism or transphobia or the patriarchy or whatever, you know, you can tell people about what kind of world that they're trying to live in, you know, that would be good for everyone. I think that kind of thinking really gets people engaged and excited. So that's really cool that you're having conversations with people, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from more people who watch the show or listen to the show, etc.
Me
too. What base things they've been up to.
By the way, just to reiterate that the game that Sophie was talking about, I know that she said the title, but again, it's a Bewitching Revolution. It's fantastic. We streamed us playing it together, so you can check that out on our YouTube or our Patreon. And it's a fantastic game. I highly recommend. It's a fun, like a fun way to get your theory in. You know, the doctor says always get your theory in every day.
It's true.
You gotta get your theory in.
Dr. Sophie says that.
Dr. Sophie says that.
Speaking of which, I have two runners up for my most based thing this week, and I wanted to share them as well because I'm just excited about them. And one of them is a book recommendation, as I'm always doing. I've been reading Revolutionary Intercommunalism and the Right of Nations to Self-Determination, which is actually very, very readable. And I wanted to bring it up because I've been kind of gravitating away from books that are just like theory for theory's sake recently, and are talking all about like psychoanalysis and the big other and this shit, because I've been reading a lot of Zizek and it's kind of tiring me out. Yeah, like this is a transcription of conversations between Huey Newton and some Yale kids, and then another conversation between Lenin about the same topic like half a century earlier. Wow. And I'm just like, I've been gravitating towards books that are like transcripts of leftists, like smart leftists talking about shit recently. And honestly, once you've gotten enough theory in, once you understand the basics of what they're going to be talking about, hearing people talk about stuff, I think is kind of, is cool. I like it probably more than I like theory development books.
It's like, honest, I guess, listening to a podcast.
But the podcast is Huey Newton, the founder of the Black Panthers.
Exactly.
And Vladimir Lenin.
I've actually, I will just jump in here quickly and say I've also I've started reading a book. You'll be really, you'll be really excited. It's called Conflict is Not Abuse by Sarah Schulman.
I've read that book. It's a good book.
It's fucking so good. I've only just started it, and like, it's like, oh wow, okay. So I actually got it for my next video. That's going to be like part 2 of this video, and I didn't realize just how appropriate it would be for what I'm actually making. And it's just really fucking good. So Fuck yeah.
Well, the last base thing I wanted to mention was a self-care thing that I have been engaging in, I was just telling Mule and Kira about this before the stream, but I've been engaging in some quite thorough processes of that involve like meeting up with other people and having pretty heavy, tiring talks, but they've been really healthy and healing to heal from some harm that I went through recently. And it's been really good for me. And I wanted to bring that up because I wanted to reiterate what we say often on the show, which is that self-care is based, and taking time to deliberately heal from your trauma is based. Right. Looking forward to hearing from the chatters about what they've been up to. But in the meantime,
and our listeners,
I believe, and the listeners, and the viewers, and the lurkers, and the creeps. In the meantime, Mule, I think you're going to tell us about Kenya.
Yes, I am. So this is another instance that we talk about a lot on Red Planet. It's a country in the imperial periphery, basically, doing the revolution. The revolution is going to happen because the material conditions of the working class get harder and harder and harder to deal with, and then people will eventually just be like, "I've had enough," and it doesn't matter who they are. They'll just be like, "What the fuck." We're getting this done. But this is in Nairobi in Kenya, where protesters have thrown stones at police in Kenya's capital, and attackers have set fire to an office run by the president's party in a western town on Thursday during a third wave of demonstrations organized by his opponents. So it's really interesting. This it's basically like really, really intense. Like you can see if you're watching this on Twitch or if you're watching on YouTube or Patreon, but thousands of people have joined marches called by opposition leader Raila Odinga against high living costs and alleged fraud in last year's vote, which is funny because it's like the opposite of the bad time when presidents call out fraud or opposition leaders call out fraud. It's like the opposite. It's like real fraud that actually happened. Violence also marred Monday's protests and the first demonstrations the Monday before that, prompting for pleas for calm from civic leaders who said they feared a descent into ethnically charged violence. I just want to point out that this is Reuters who actually said this: ethnically charged violence. They're reporting from civic leaders who did say this, but just a really bizarre choice of words there. I think you can understand the harmful implications of that. So of this on this actual day, March 30th, earlier in the day, Odinga rode through Nairobi's pipeline neighborhood in a convoy with other opposition leaders. Odinga, who is one of the opposition leaders, as hundreds of supporters marched alongside, waving twigs, saucepans, and empty packets of flour. The protesters have accused President William Ruto of mismanagement, while his supporters have accused Odinga of using anger over rising prices. Well, yes, that is something that will happen if you make life unaffordable. If you make surviving unaffordable, anger seems to be the natural reaction to that, doesn't it? So yeah,
that's truly some like Wile E. Coyote ass shit to be like, the Roadrunner has used this cliff face to bash my face in. When I ran into it, I got injured.
Yeah, it's just like, I opened a door and that meant that the door opened and I was able to pass through it. I
can't believe radical leftists are using this field of rakes to repeatedly hit me in the face.
Exactly. So the last thing to say about this story is that Odinga has run for president 5 times before now, and he's basically challenging Ruto's victory in August's election, but the Supreme Court has upheld the result unanimously. Again, very funny that there's a Supreme Court where they're just basically used to uphold the status quo and the establishment. It's the same the world around, folks. This is what you have to remember, and there are hundreds of countries all over the world, and whenever one of them basically rises up and says we've had enough, we're going to be reporting on it. Speaking of which, you enjoyed that segue, didn't you, Sophie? Sophie is going to tell us about French rail workers storming BlackRock in Paris.
That's right. That is kind of it. But like, also, if you've not been living under a rock the last few weeks, you probably noticed that shit's kicking off in France. So to just recap some of the reporting that we've done in the last few weeks, Macron, tiny baby boy Macron, who can't do anything wrong, small uwu bean, neoliberal ghoul Macron, has he said he wanted to raise the retirement age in France by 2 years. And the French were not happy at all, sparking massive demonstrations and strikes across the country. I think it's really important for me to say as well that when unions do 1 or 2 day strikes or 3-day strikes, those are demonstrations, right? They're showing their power. That's not although that can make the bosses or the government back down, it's not there to be the whole struggle. It's there to say, we could do this long term if you don't sort it out. And I said that the week before Macron decided to just skip completely past the workers and past Parliament and past everyone and just raise the retirement age completely undemocratically, because neoliberal politicians are actually just authoritarian freaks. And so what did they do? They set Paris on fire. Completely reasonably, some people might say, I'm not in France, I don't know what the law is there. I assume that it's legal to set things on fire since so many people are doing it. Yep. But it seems like they're having a hell of a time. And on the 11th straight day of protesting, striking rail workers and other protesters stormed into the headquarters. Well, I don't know if it's the headquarters, actually, because I assume it's international finance, but the offices of BlackRock in Paris, which is an investment firm who have significant involvement with France's pension funds. In there, they walked around with lit flares and union flags and basically demonstrated occupying the offices because fuck those guys. It's pretty much the story. So, but that's we have another France story also involving Macron. Kira, you want to tell us about Facebook?
Sure. This is pretty terrifying. We've seen this in other countries. I think we saw that in America, and there's, I know, a lot of discussions of it being put into practice in England. I'm not really sure where that's been at, but in France, this woman is facing a trial and a 12,000 euro fine for insulting Macron on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So a woman in northern France is going to be put on trial on charges of insulting President Macron after describing him as filth in a Facebook post.
He is filth.
He is filth. Correct. Yeah.
For the record.
For the record, yes, he is filth. She risks a fine of 12,000 euros, but not prison if convicted at the trial. Be held on. Wait, but not prison. I'm not really sure. She risks a fine of 12,000 euros. And a trial is being held about this in June. So she was arrested on Friday and held in questioning.
Just to be clear, she is not in danger of going to prison, although a fine that large without a prison sentence is quite unusual.
Thank you for clarifying. Yeah. So let's see here. The complaint focused on a post on her Facebook page made on March 21st, the day before Macron gave a lunchtime interview to a TF1 television to defend his controversial pension reforms that we were just discussing, that has sparked nationwide protests. She wrote, "This piece of filth is going to address you at 1 p.m. It's always on television that we see this filth." And that's it. That's it. She stands accused of insulting the president of the Republic and will stand trial on June 20th. And what kind of shocks me is like how quickly the law enforcement is kind of like, crashed down on her. She made this post on March 21st. And now she's already being, threatened. So this is pretty terrifying. She says that they want to make an example of me. She said that she was astonished when she answered the knock on the door on Friday morning to find police had come to arrest her. I asked them if it was a joke. I had never been arrested, she said. I am not public enemy number one. So that's pretty disgusting. Yeah,
it sounds to me like Macron is actually filth. It sounds like he is filth. And I think the more people that say it, especially if you aren't in France and you're not subject to the laws that, that oversee the country of France, then you should say that as much as humanly possible. I think that's what we should do.
Yeah, this definitely, if anything, just further confirms how much he is in fact filth.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that Matthew Lubchansky comic where the guy is saying like, are you triggered, while he's like tattooing a swastika on his head and shaving his hair off and all that. Like it's just like how dare you call me filth, I'm gonna like fine you 12,000 euros. Like, yeah man, that's filth behavior. So good job. Good job.
It happened.
But could you, Mule, tell me what's going on with sex workers in Amsterdam?
I will tell you about that. So most people know Amsterdam for basically having a lot of sex work going on there, the red light district and all that kind of stuff. But there are some new rules. Sex workers are protesting in Amsterdam and the headline basically says this is not a zoo. So new rules for sex workers are coming into force on April 1st, according to officials, requiring Amsterdam's sex work businesses to close their doors at 3 a.m. rather than 6 a.m. to combat what local authorities describe as nuisance behavior by people visiting the red light district. The reduced hours come amid an ongoing campaign by the city council to move sex workers into an, quote, erotic center. I didn't think the erotic center was a physical place in a city. I thought that was a personal. Anyway, basically outside of the heart of the city, they're basically trying to move the red light districts outside of the heart of the city. Amsterdam is also introducing measures to limit waterway cruises and impose restrictions on vacation rentals, as well as lobbying for an aviation tax to tackle budget flights. Several sex workers told CNN the reforms aimed at them are increasing stigma and that they believe they are being unfairly discriminated against and used as a scapegoat for the city's problem with mass tourism. And I'm inclined to agree, to be honest, because, they don't appear to be trying to, stop people from smoking weed, despite them having sort of played with that in the past. They're telling tourists that they need to get like a green card, quote unquote, not the same green card in America, but
right.
A weed card in order to go and smonk the dank in Amsterdam.
Sounds like some shit Keir Starmer would ask to see. Like,
yeah,
do you have your weed card?
Do you have your weed card?
Are you smoking a joint there? I hope you have your weed license.
That's the most heavy drug going, actually. So Felicia Anna, not her real name for privacy reasons, is a former sex worker who has lived in Amsterdam for 13 years and is now the chairperson of Red Light United, a union for window workers in Amsterdam's red light district, which sounds really fucking cool and based. Anna says the reduced business hours will drastically reduce income for window workers, leaving many barely able to cover expenses. If you don't know what window workers are, if you've never been to Amsterdam, the red light district, there are basically sex workers that will hang out in windows as an advertisement, to people who would want to come in and have sex, basically. So they are basically trying to, they're not saying that they're trying to do this, but this is what's going to happen if these laws come to pass, basically, that window workers, will lose a lot of income. They have to be able to cover expenses like window room rent, taxis to get home safely. Felicia Anna says most of the workers start work after 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning when the bars start to close down, because obviously that is... that's when they're going to get high traffic. It makes sense, right? It's just, standard that just makes sense. It's logic. Anna told CNN, now you have maybe 2 hours to make any money, which is not enough. Violet, which is also an alias named due to privacy concerns, is a sex worker and coordinator for the Prostitution Information Center, PIC, which is an Amsterdam-based organization that provides information and education about sex work. Violet says the reduced hours will particularly impact the transgender community, stating that many clients who come between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. request transgender sex workers. She also spoke about welfare concerns for all sex workers, explaining how it could impact their ability to get home safely. If you're traveling home at 3 o'clock in the morning, she says, especially if everything is closed, then that leaves you as a sex worker in greater vulnerability, comparing it to 6 a.m., which they said is more social activity and transport options. Ours, she says, is usually a cash-based income. So at that time in the morning, we could be traveling around with a lot of cash. And, we're talking a lot of cash. If there are not many people out in the streets, this gives people who would wish to do us harm an opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
There was a protest organized by sex workers and they interrupted a city council meeting on Thursday. Based. And the city council meeting was discussing location options for the proposed erotic center. I think just like a little bit of personal insight on this, and not in terms of like sex worker experience, but in terms of like people who want to move quote unquote undesirable things from one place to another. Sometimes we get things like this in the tenants union, for example, when people are desperate to move undesirable neighbors to other places, or like decide who gets to live where and stuff like that. But the issue with this is not just one of ethics. Like, you shouldn't be deciding who gets to live where. That sounds like it's going to be a bit of a slippery slope, and it has been in history. But also you are just moving those quote unquote undesirable people to another place where they will be seen as undesirable, and therefore what are you actually achieving?
Relocation is an essential part of what we call problematization, which is how a community is increasingly made into a problem, not just treated as a problem to begin with, but like if they're relocated, then like you're saying, when they are put into the new place, the people in that new place are like, why are there suddenly these people who I didn't ask to have around, and then they'll register all the complaints from those people and be like, look, you're not getting on with any of your neighbors. Clearly you're a problem, and so on and so on.
Yeah, for sure. It's just not a solution. Anyone with any kind of experience of, actual demographics or city planning or anything like that will know that this is just not a viable solution. The solution isn't required, actually. Because sex workers are gonna just be impacted terribly by this. But also Halsema has previously stated that some visitors see window workers as only a tourist attraction, arguing that an erotic center will reduce the pressure on the red light district and create a place where sex workers can work safely and undisturbed. Sex workers, however, disagree, with Red Light United arguing that the erotic center could create an environment for more crime and quote unquote shady behavior. They say the beneficial thing, Felicia Anna says the beneficial thing for working behind the window is that it is visible and you feel safer. In an erotic center, you don't have the same feeling because you're closed off in a building. She also echoed safety concerns, arguing that relocating sex workers would also remove some social protections. This is basically what we were saying before. You're going to get more concentrated behaviors in an area which can't be monitored as well. It's not subject to public scrutiny. And one of the great things that's so great about being a sex worker in Amsterdam is that when people get their cameras out and try to take photos, it's not just the sex workers who help, but also the local community. And that is something I actually have personal experience of, because I remember going to Amsterdam with a group of lads when I was about, how old was I? 19 or something like that. And they were trying to take pictures of sex workers, and I think one of them nearly got punched, basically. So yeah, it's a legit thing that legitimately happens. Just members of the public will be like, what are you doing, bro? Fuck off. The city council has also introduced several campaigns, including the Stay Away campaign, which initially targeted young British men, triggering a video advertisement that warns of antisocial behavior if they search for terms such as stag party Amsterdam, cheap hotel Amsterdam, or pub crawl Amsterdam. Anna believes the broader problem lies in the no rules attitude attached to the idea of Amsterdam, which she agrees needs to change. You can have several campaigns telling people to stay away, but people are not going to stay away. You need to teach people how to behave. If you don't do that, it's never going to change. And this is not a zoo. I think that this is really pertinent, and this speaks to not just, it's true. We need to teach people how to behave, towards sex workers. But, that I think can only really happen if there is a decriminalization, like an actual decriminalization effort, liberation effort, actually, not just decriminalization for sex workers everywhere. Because if sex workers are then present everywhere, then British men will not be like, let's go to Amsterdam where we could do whatever we want and all the rules, you could break all the rules there.
Because they'll be like far away people who don't matter.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a kind of othering. Like it's like, oh well, we'll go to Amsterdam, do whatever we want. It will be dead funny, and then we could just go home when it's all done, right? So yeah, that's the story about Amsterdam. And
Thank you for
next
telling
up,
us about the erotic center.
it's really important to know about the erotic center. Just in my personal
I do know,
experience.
I know about the erotic center, but I'm glad that you told the chatters about it.
They need to know. They need to know, especially chatters and listeners and lurkers and weirdos and creeps. Yeah. But Kira, why don't you tell us about what is going on in the Al-Aqsa Mosque?
Yeah. So, as usual, Israel is up to bullshit and just terrorizing Palestinian people. So right now, Ramadan is happening. So Ramadan is just a little bit of background on Ramadan. Ramadan is the most sacred month of the year for Muslims. It's observed by Muslims all over the world as a month for fasting, prayer, reflection, and community. It's a commemoration of Muhammad's first revelation, and the annual observance of Ramadan is regarded as one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and it lasts from 29 to 30 days. And if you're wondering why you don't, if you're ever questioning like when Ramadan is, it's always a little bit different every year because it goes off of like moon cycles instead of like calendar months. So it's from one sighting of the crescent moon to the next. And so this year, Ramadan falls from the evening of March 22nd until the evening of April 20th. Yeah. So and to continue this, Al-Aqsa Mosque is the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound is a very, very important site for Muslims, and therefore is very important in the observance of Ramadan. Muslims regard this site as the 3rd holiest in Islam after Mecca and Medina. It's located in Jerusalem. It's under Israeli occupation. Israel captured this site in the 1967 war and annexed it with the rest of East Jerusalem and adjoining parts of the West Bank, of course, in a move that is not recognized as legitimate internationally. So with that little bit of background, before dawn on Wednesday, Israeli police stormed Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in the occupied East Jerusalem and attacked dozens of worshipers. It's pretty brutal what they did. And so they're frequently doing this. This is not the first time Israel has done this, for the record. And I don't think this will be the last time they do this over the course of Ramadan. Israeli police, this is what they're saying. They're claiming that they're responding to rioting and they had to beat the worshipers with batons and they had to use tear gas and they had to use sound bombs to force them out of the prayer halls. They said that these were mass agitators and they locked themselves into the mosque using fireworks, sticks, and stones. Can you believe it?
Oh my
wow.
Yeah, when the police entered,
sticks and stones?
and some
someone,
fireworks.
How is someone in like full riot gear with a Tavor X95 supposed to like possibly defend themselves to that? That's ridiculous.
So by the way, the fireworks were fired inside the mosque when they were being attacked by the Israeli occupying forces, for the record.
Jesus.
They're not just like sitting there just like being assholes. So did you know that one Israeli occupying officer was wounded in the leg?
Oh, so. No, I definitely care about that.
Yeah. Israeli police said that they made this prior agreement with the Al-Aqsa compound authorities and said that no one was allowed to spend the night inside the compound during the month of Ramadan. And that police said they peacefully tried to convince people to leave, but when that didn't happen, they had to force their way into Al-Aqsa. So Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh, I can't say his last name, I apologize. He condemned what happened as a major crime against worshipers, and so is, by the way, the rest of the Muslim and Arab world, adding that prayer in Al-Aqsa Mosque is not with the permission of the Israeli occupation. It is our rights. It should also be said, by the way, that overnight prayer is part, and it's not compulsory, but it is part of the celebration or the observance of Ramadan. So it's occupying one of the most holiest sites for Muslims, restricting who can enter, like when they can enter, claiming that they have some authority to do this, and then taking that as an excuse to go inside that site during the holiest time of the year, Ramadan, to terrorize Palestinians worshiping.
Jesus.
is just it's abominable. It's vile. I
Yeah.
just want to make it clear. It's vile.
It should also be noted that like Ramadan for Muslims is like a time of mercy. Like a lot, like you like hear a lot of people talking about like mercy and like what are you going to do with your mercy this Ramadan and stuff.
Yeah.
So like, you know, doing it at this time of year when like, you know, Muslims are basically like, you know, trying to feel close to their, you know, they're trying to get closer to Allah. They're trying to get like, you know, feel more spiritual and like, you know, give charitably and all this kind of stuff. It's like, it just makes it that much more insidious, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a quick question. Death to the Israeli regime? Question mark. No, full stop. That was it. I'm done.
I just want to add that what I was just mentioning is one specific incident amongst many. So right now, I believe there's like 400 Palestinians, I think, in custody. If the last I checked, you can find video footage of Israeli occupying forces terrorizing worshipers that are outside of buildings in the middle of the day. They're just pushing them around, not allowing them to actually like just exist. So just to be clear, this is one incident of many that I assume will continue to transpire, unfortunately, as Ramadan continues. Fuck Israel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Horrific.
You know who else?
Yeah. Segue into the next thing.
Yeah. you know, fuck who else? That's right. It's Jeff Bezos. Leaked documents from Amazon's Global Security Operations Center, which does sound like some Bond villain ass shit. No, I'm gonna back up on that one. It sounds like some Metal Gear ass shit, right? It sounds like villains from a Kojima game or like
cartoon
Resident Evil
villain, yeah, but they're in real life. Make it real life.
Global Security Operations Center documents from Amazon show that the megacorp is spying on unions, and not just their unions and their own workers, but all the unions, as well as environmentalists and other social movements. And when I say that they're spying on them, who do you think Amazon has doing the spying? That's right, it's everyone's favorite union busting little private police force creeps, the Pinkertons, the literal actual Pinkertons from the original wave of violence and union busting in the 20th century. Now are working for Amazon. I think we noted this before. Amazon also, and I definitely mentioned this last time we talked about it. Amazon has made an Amazon Prime series called Pinkertons, where the Pinkertons are the good guys, and it follows the first female detective. So I mean, broadly, just like fuck Amazon is the kind of the main takeaway here. But I'll read a little bit from the article. Where was it? Some of the internal reports obtained by Motherboard also suggest that Amazon's risk analysts use the same tactics to monitor its hundreds of thousands of warehouse and delivery drivers throughout the Americas, the Middle East, Australia, and East Asia. It's not enough for Amazon to abuse its dominant market power and face antitrust charges by the EU. Now they're exporting 19th century American union busting tactics to Europe. Christy Hoffman, General Secretary of UNI Global Union, a global federation of trade unions that represents more than 20 million workers, told Motherboard. This is a company that is ignoring the law, spying on workers, and using every page of the US union busting playbook to silence workers' voices. For years, people have been comparing big tech bosses to 19th century robber barons, she continued, and now, by using the Pinkertons to do his dirty work, Jeff Bezos is making that connection even clearer. Until recently, little had been made public about Amazon's anti-worker initiatives and strategies, despite years of reports on Amazon's opposition to union activity and alleged retaliation against workers who organize in the United States. In September, after public outcry, Amazon removed 2 job postings for intelligence analysts for its Global Security Operations Center, who could track labor organizing threats to the company. Fluency of a second language such as Hindi, Tagalog, Spanish, Arabic, French, Mandarin, Korean, Japanese, or Brazilian Portuguese, highly desired, the posting read, suggesting the company is tracking labor organizing around the world. Awesome. Love that. No, I don't love that actually.
No.
A source of the knowledge of the company's intelligence activities told Motherboard that in order to track protests and other labor organizing activity, Amazon intelligence agents create social media accounts without photos and track the online activity of workers leading organizing efforts. Motherboard granted the source anonymity because they feared retaliation from Amazon. When that team stalked people, they'd use fake accounts on social media, they said. They'd use a fake name with a profile with no photo. The worst part is that they read tons of conversations and messages and knew everything about the private lives of these people. They knew if they had a bad day with their family. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that first and foremost, fuck Amazon. It can't be said enough. But it's really worth saying that this demonstrates Amazon forming some kind of similar organs to a modern capitalist state, right? Like having its own internal intelligence forces, which is pretty scary. And I think that that goes to show some of the ways in which wealth accumulation for the ultra rich just form the same patterns when it's protecting the same amount of wealth. Bezos is one of the richest people in the entire world, and Amazon
Sophie,
is.
You know books, don't you? I'm certain that there is a book, and I might have read it when I was like young and didn't really understand it, but I'm absolutely certain that there's like a book that's like a fiction dystopian universe where like countries are just like companies. And like a little bit of me is saying like, have I just
quite a few books like that, babe? Are you thinking?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
The whole genre of cyberpunk. But I mean, this is something that I broadly say is not really the future that we're looking at. I don't think that companies will overtake states because states need to exist to mediate class tensions in favor of the ruling class. But what I'm trying to comment on here is really that it's quite scary that without the accountability of being recognized as a state with citizens, Amazon is able to do all the scariest shit that states can do, but with no kind of recourse or way to stop them. Right, that's enough Amazon. Mule, what's happening in Nebraska?
Well, some really awesome stuff is going on in Nebraska, and it is, for want of a better explanation, it's a Democratic senator, a couple of Democratic senators who are using the GOP's classic technique of filibustering for good. It's actually happening. They're doing it for good, and this is really awesome. Erin Reed, aka Erin in the Morn, who is a really good reporter on Twitter for basically all the anti-trans bills that you will be hearing about in the US, was speaking about this earlier. And she was basically saying that Senators Kavanaugh, Hunt, Frederickson, and others are continuing to filibuster the Nebraska legislature to stop a trans healthcare ban. It's gone on for months. So what's actually happening there? So Nebraska lawmakers haven't passed a single bill this session as a state lawmaker continues a weeks-long filibuster protest over trans rights and vows to, quote, burn this session to the ground if she has to, which is really fucking awesome. Starting in February, Kavanaugh has filibustered every bill that has come before the legislature this session. She's protesting proposal LB 574. Brace yourself, audience, for the most disgusting named bill regarding anti-trans stuff. Let Them Grow Act. Just fucking disgusting, which was put forward by a Republican lawmaker. Under the bill's current version, physicians will be barred from providing gender-affirming procedures and care for Nebraska residents younger than 19. Kavanaugh talks for up to 12 hours a day on the floor to prevent bills passing, speaking on everything from the bills themselves to her favorite salads, which I think is really
I like Caesar.
Awesome. Caesar salad.
Last time we talked about this, she recounted the entire plot of Madagascar.
Yeah,
awesome.
just really, really awesome stuff. So yeah, you know, like I said, using the Republicans' favorite weapon against them. She's made her intentions clear. Basically, she says, "quote If this legislature collectively decides that legislating hate against children is our priority, then I'm going to make it painful for everyone." There has been a record number of anti-LGBTQ bills introduced in state legislatures this year. I'm sure that you are all aware as listeners of Red Planet. The American Civil Liberties Union has been tracking 452 anti-LGBTQ bills in the US that cover everything from access to healthcare to participating in school activities. And again, I want to talk to my other cis queer people out there. Yeah, LGBTQ, anti-LGBTQ, not just anti-trans. This is something we've been saying for years and years. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter that, you know, they're also coming for cis queers as well. But, you know, we told you innit, and trans people have been telling you for yonks. Yeah. It's not just trans people who are under threat here. But yes, they've been you know, tracking 452 anti-LGBTQ bills in the US that cover all those things that we just said. The Biden administration has apparently announced a new proposal that would make it illegal for schools to broadly ban transgender students from sport teams that align with their gender identity rather than their assigned sex at birth. That sounds good, but I would rather the Biden administration make it illegal to ban healthcare.
The malarkey.
You know, malarkey over apparently, but I would like to see
action.
I would like to see like less malarkey, you know, and I would like to see him, you know, make it illegal for you know, doctors to not prescribe healthcare for trans.
I think
people.
Biden should be illegal.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I think all presidents should be illegal. Every kind of leader in the world. Anyway, speaking to NPR on Friday.
No Brandons.
That's good. We should put that on a t-shirt. So speaking to NPR on Friday, Kavanaugh said she was pushing back against a new trend in politics. She says, "I don't know why, as a nation, as policymakers, there is this newfound focus on trans children. Trans children have always existed. They have always lived in our society, in our schools, in our families. And all of a sudden, there is a decision by policymakers that we need to do something about them. It doesn't make any sense to me. And so I don't think any policies that restrict the rights of children because they are trans are appropriate." And you know what I say to that? Based. And that is the end. She is a queen. She's an absolute queen. What a legend. And with that, the news session segment is over. It's finished. It's over. So yeah, that's that basically.
If you got this far, we've just inserted all sorts of knowledge into your brain.
So
you
much
just take a moment and just feel that knowledge. Just feel that knowledge inserted into your brain.
Yeah.
Feel it swirl around.
It's kind of jiggling around in there. Like you feel like it might spill out, but it's not gonna, because you're holding your brain really tense. And that's really good of you. Well done. That's good.
So
if you want your brain to be even more full though, like stretch it out.
More jiggly.
Like, you know, like make your brain kind of like wider, like maybe more tender. You could go to patreon.com/red_planet, where hopefully soon there's actually going to be bonus content as well, which you can definitely stretch your brain with. We can't tell you more about it right now, but when it's been recorded, we will be able to.
So we now have... Oh, go on, Sophie. Sorry.
Well, I've actually interviewed people from this org before. When I did a series called Organizing Interviews on my channel. I guess this week from Common Humanity Collective, who are a West Coast mutual aid organization who started during the pandemic. I don't really want to tell too much about them because although I have chatted at length with them before, I think that they'll tell it best themselves. They've done a lot of really interesting and cool stuff. As I said, they started during the pandemic, but they kind of, something I was really impressed, two things I was really impressed by when I talked to them before were that they said, that the people I talked to at least said that they were most inspired by the Black Panther Party, which is cool.
Hear me?
And also that
adjust my audio here.
The way that they branched out from different things as their mission grew and they reached more people, which I I don't know. I was just really impressed by. I think they're a cool bunch, but they can tell you in their own words. I think we have Larry and Grant from Common Humanity Collective here to join us.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello, great to see all of you.
Hey there.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yeah, thanks for having us.
So tell us a little bit about what Common Humanity Collective does. What are you all about? What do you do? What's going on? Fill us in.
Yeah, of course. I guess I'll give my piece, and Larry, if you wanna jump in, please do. Common Humanity Collective is a Bay Area local mutual aid org that we got its start during the about the height of the 2020 pandemic out here. Started off being a collective of Berkeley scholars who, with help from a grant from the UC, actually went ahead and started off by creating. If y'all remember back then, there was the massive issue with supplying hand sanitizer. So the org got to start creating hand sanitizer and distributing that out, and then slowly but surely, as other issues mounted, next one being the lack of masks, figuring out ways of providing high filtration masks that could be put together, done at a point, especially during when we were in stricter lockdowns, that we done at a distance over Zoom calls, getting people together, distributing out kits, and putting these masks together and getting them out there to the community. As we moved into that very hectic wildfire season, there became that need to as we identified the lack of good quality air within particularly around Oakland, Emeryville, that area. Putting together these DIY air purifiers between a box fan and some other pieces, and then hosting outdoor builds, bringing the community together, and letting people during this moment where everyone's isolated, coming together to build something that people can bring into their homes and have good quality air, but also know that this is something that they did for themselves, that they can share and spread with others in the community, friends, family, all of that. Since then, we've kind of just been an org that does our best to kind of engage with different community endeavors, whether that be with churches, other local orgs, and just trying to do what we can to kind of build community and create those networks of solidarity and reciprocity, and really build that spirit of mutual aid. That's kind of my spiel on CHC. Larry, I don't know if what I said differs kind of from what you kind of have taken from the org.
Yeah, I totally covered the basics there. We've kind of progressed in terms of our activities, and I come at it from a mechanical engineering perspective. So from the hand sanitizers, resource-wise, that's something where it was an emergency situation, and the resources were there at UC labs and places like that to actually put it together. And then there was a giant mask shortage. And so one of our fellow volunteers came up with a really nice design of pleating filter material such that you didn't need to sew it, and making a really high quality, high filtration mask. Compared to an N95, they're about an N88 or so. And these are masks that people can put together. We made kits for those to hand out to people that they then took home, and we had Zoom meetings where everybody would build a bunch of masks and then distribute them. And so those were in pretty high quantity. And then from there, like Grant was talking about the air purifiers, that's kind of where I came in. After the first round of that, I'd been doing that on my own, putting together box fans and furnace filters and cardboard and stuff like that, from the fires that started around 2017 or so, when the sky turned orange here. Kind of realized, oh yeah, we really need to care about the quality of air in our homes.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been doing a whole bunch of other activities alongside those things. It's not just that, but I think we're at our core is when we're building stuff for ourselves and others and getting people engaged in the process.
That is so awesome. And so this all basically came about during COVID. And I guess like one of the questions that I'd want to ask is, you know, how have you been getting the community involved? Like what did that look? I know you said that you were holding like a lot of Zoom meetings and stuff like that, but like, you know, talk to us about the kind of like struggles that you had in sort of getting people involved and trying to get, because I think like that one of the things that I think our audience, you know, get a little doom pilled about is like, how do we get people to understand that like we need to help each other?
Yeah. I don't know. Do you want to answer this first, or do you want me to?
Oh, I mean, it just maybe I can kind of describe the range of things we're doing now, and then Grant, maybe you could fill us in on the rest. But it ranges from like with those mask builds over Zoom have also turned into mass builds that we do in person, usually outside. We'll get together a whole bunch of tables and supplies and get 50 people together and bang out a whole bunch of those things. Or we've been doing that with air purifiers as well. And we just had our first indoor build a few weeks ago where we had air purifiers running, everybody was wearing a mask, and we were getting together and building these things. And other circumstances in terms of getting longer term engagement is we had a couple of mask builds with a particular church where we built a personal relationship with them and kind of kept that going, and where the folks themselves could use the masks and then hand them out to people who needed them as well. Grant, you want to pick up from there?
Yeah. But pretty much spot on what Larry said there. I go even further to say, like, especially back in 2020, when like this project was just kind of having its start, and this is before I actually joined on. But during those early phases, like it was pretty much like that, like coming in, when people are asking the question of like, okay, how do I get hand sanitizer? How do I get these masks? And like, especially at that time, there is an organization out here, I think Bay Area Mutual Aid, that a bunch of groups were collaborating and engaging with each other to kind of figure out how do we go about like getting people engaged in like meeting need, of what CHC was a part of. So especially during those early phases, it was like us working with these other orgs, and their connections to community members, and like from there, like distributing out mask kits, and then hosting Zoom meetings at certain times and certain dates to try to get as many people on board with it. And then from there, once masks were made, either going out to the places that we had sent out kits, and like from there figuring out, okay, where can we maximize like this distribution and like getting these out to people who need them. So it was really a mixture of like just kind of engaging existing community structures, kind of like and like also being willing to kind of like go out there and like just talk to people, talk to existing community groups, like Larry was mentioning with the church. During that, like we were calling different churches, just kind of telling them what we wanted to do, how we wanted to work with them to kind of to meet needs. I think that's, and I think getting to your point about like getting people off like that doomer pill of like there's nothing to do. There's a lot to do. Like if you take the time to try to look at and like really search into what's being done in your area by different groups, you'll definitely stumble onto something. And I can't say that's true of every place. We're definitely in a position here in the Bay Area where we have a bunch of urban centers that kind of make it easier for people to kind of congregate and like meet, talk, interact, and engage in these kind of collective endeavors. But it was just trying to especially for an org kind of coming out of the pandemic, it was very important to just kind of put ourselves out there and just kind of encourage people to kind of come in and like see that this is something that can be done to tangibly benefit not just like people individually, but communities at scale. And I think doing that kind of built a good foundation for other people to just kind of naturally start telling people like, hey, there's this group here that's doing these builds. Like, if you want to come through on like their mask build or their air purifier build, let's see what it's all about. And like yeah. So I would say that's kind of how we've kind of been navigating through that domain.
It sounds quite difficult because I think and when you're I mean, I don't want to say selling because you're not selling, but like selling the idea of like masks and air purifiers. Like you mentioned the fires, obviously like the horrific like forest fires that like devastated California, and you know, but also like, you know, during COVID-19 obviously there was a lot of focus on masks as well, and like how are you selling like the mutual aid nowadays? Because people, I think, even in progressive circles are starting to just be like, well, COVID isn't a problem anymore, even though it most certainly is, and you know, just aren't really seeing the necessity of you know, wearing masks and what have you. Like, how are you selling the idea of, you know, creating these items in order to serve the community?
Yeah, I mean, we build on people who are interested. So I mean, that kind of level of public education is going to be pretty tough. But there is, especially in the San Francisco Bay Area, fortunately is still a fair amount of interest here. And then, I mean, I think everybody sees the need for air quality health with wildfire smoke, and even pollution. Like there are freeways running right upwind of all the East Bay cities here, Oakland, Berkeley, everywhere else there. And so like we did and to your prior question about models of engagement, we've done things like builds at schools or builds at street fairs, and we had a street fair in Oakland in particular last year that was really excellent in terms of the way we did it. Was we had people step up and actually build an air purifier on the spot. So we showed them how to put the box fan and filter together and how that all went. The trouble there was that the need is so great, and people really, I mean, really want to improve their indoor air quality, whether it's for smoke or car pollution or anything else, or COVID safety. And so here we are, a little org working off, you know, we had some large contributions earlier, but now we're trying to become a sustainable organization where we and you know, when it comes to something like a box fan, which will be about $25-30 US versus and an air filter is $10 to $15, it adds up real quick. And it's like, we're really trying to also do an education element, like I talked about, with going into classrooms and teaching kids how to build them and then having them take them home. Is that part of it is about self-empowerment. Like, we're not helpless here. We really can use the materials available to us. We don't have to pay through the nose for a $200 HEPA air purifier. You can make one for $40 that performs better. And how does that actually work? And I can talk to this technical details of air purifiers and that kind of stuff later on if you want to, but glad to pursue the
I'm totally down to have that conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I would love to nerd out on stuff like that. So we've done stuff like that on my stream where we nerd out on like different devices. We haven't done one on air purifiers, but I would love to nerd out. That'd be great. I just wanted to mention something. It's less of a question and more of just like a comment. With the fires, when were they? Was it 2017 or 2020? Or I can't even tell time anymore. When the skies all turned orange. Whatever, what it was in the past, right? That was when it was made. At least I became like very aware that there is a luxury.
It's in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sophie. That's when I became like very palpably aware that there is depressingly a luxury air like industry. There's a segment of capitalism that monetizes air, right? And monetizes clean air, and poor people are not afforded this luxury. Rich people, when those forest fires were plaguing so many states, were able to, you know, shut their windows and run their HEPA filters, or were able to check into like a Hilton or something, or maybe take a vacation. Whereas many of us did not have that luxury, and we just had to inhale, or even had to like work out in the fields, right, to fight those fires. I know the prisoners were tasked with that. Were tasked with effectively being enslaved to have to fight these fires, because even other firefighters weren't taking these fights. So I just wanted to comment on like how much respect I have for what y'all are doing, helping to educate the public to be able to, help create a mutual aid system to be able to empower each other and to not have to bow down to that segment of capitalism. I know you're talking about how it still unfortunately costs money to buy like the box fan and the filters, et cetera, and how you're trying to work around that. And that's just one of those realities of just living in the system that we live in. But I think still the amount that y'all been what y'all are doing and the amount that you've been able to help, I think it's just really, really awesome. And I'd love to see it. And I think more people should be aware that unfortunately there is a segment of capitalism that is monetizing air, as depressing as that is. And it does make profits when, say, the rest of us are choking.
Yeah.
Not a question, just a comment.
Reminds me a little bit of the healthcare industry where it's like, oh, well, we've got all these chemicals in your food and things like that that'll get you sick, but hey, we'll charge you money to save your life. So
yeah. Or like the organic food industry is like, it's an example of that, which is like it's not ceasing the use of potentially harmful pesticides or any of that. It's saying, no, we're going to continue doing that. That's for the poorest. The rich can pay an extra amount that it's going to be negligible to them, but they can avoid those things.
I want to add to that comment, like when you hear that an org is making air purifiers, that sounds like it's kind of too high tech for something to be that's going to be like people are getting together in groups and just making a bunch of them and giving them out for free. So it's really inspiring, I think, to see that that's happening. But I do have a question, and I'm sorry if I missed this in you telling before, but when did each of you get involved personally with CHC?
Yeah. So I got involved a little bit before Larry did. It was at the, oh my God, time.
Yep.
It was either late 2020 or early 2021. But at the time, I had actually heard about CHC through at the tail end of 2020. I had joined the local East Bay DSA chapter, and during that time period, as part of CHC's endeavors to kind of like create these networks of community and solidarity. The MASK project was kind of a subsidiary cooperative endeavor between CHC and DSA. So through networks and just asking questions as a newbie to this organization, I ended up actually getting in contact with Janine, and Janine kind of helped invite me out to one of CHC's outdoor mask builds. And that's kind of where it really started, being able to and again, this kind of goes back to what DJ had said earlier about getting people engaged. I know a part of it for me was just again like looking around and just finding the DSA, through DSA, asking questions, and then through that finding CHC, and in that seeing what THC was doing, the fact that they were out and engaging in community and solidarity and trying to actively work to meet this need, it really encouraged me and inspired me to kind of continue engaging with them. So I've been with the org since about 2021. So moving through the wildfire seasons, seeing the temperamental ways of which our state and country have been dealing with the pandemic, and just seeing how needs shift, and maybe we can definitely speak more to like the point that DJ raised about the fact that we're now living in a landscape where the import assigned to mitigating the effects of COVID has dwindled dramatically compared to when this project was first founded. But it's been a process, and just being able to work with other people through it all has just been an amazing experience.
Yeah.
That's just, it's so frustrating, like, to see that, by the way. Like, I think everyone in this call understands the COVID is very real. It's still killing tons of people, disproportionately hurting marginalized folks. I used to be an epidemiologist, and I ended up leaving that field for just for reasons, nothing too dramatic, but I'm almost like, in some ways, I think that it'd be some. I was in an infectious disease epidemiology, so if I stayed, I would have probably been working with COVID. And there's a part of me that's like grateful that I'm not in it anymore, because the way that the public health, especially in America, has been reacting to COVID is really, really frustrating. And this is actually one of the big reasons I ended up leaving that industry, is because it was very frustrating to know what you need to do, but then you can't do it because of all this garbage, right? So I again, I have a lot of admiration for y'all for still fighting the good fight, despite the nightmarishly, like, Twilight Zone-y, like way that a lot of people in the public are treating COVID. It's very, it's very upsetting for me. It's really hard for me to, like, leave the house and interact with, like, the world because of this.
Absolutely.
So props, honestly.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I know I'm still being cautious myself, so it is difficult socially for sure. You know, I've got accommodating friends. I went over to a friend's place and wore a mask while they didn't, and that was fine. But you know, we made it work. But in general, like, I'm not going out to bars and stuff like that, so it does make things pretty difficult.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say it was good for me because it gave me a really good excuse to just stop drinking. So now I just don't go to bars, and I'm quite happy with that, actually. Just staying in and you know, watching films or doing a jigsaw puzzle. That's loads better.
Yeah, and of course, you know, if that's the worst impact on my life, is not the worst thing in the world. But I was going to say, building on what Kara was saying before, is that meanwhile the critters are just eating it. Right? They can't get an air purifier. They're just
right.
And so it's an environmental cause. It's just the amount of animal suffering out there. It's pretty ridiculous.
Awful. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for pointing to that. Yeah. I have actually interviewed a couple of people from the collective before on my main channel, and it was Joe and Janine. And I remember being struck then by and I was saying this a little bit in the intro, how just how cool it is to see, like, an org that's adapting to different crises that are going on, like that you were responding to the pandemic to begin with, and then responding to the fires. And I'm just wondering if, like, there's been any kind of internal thinking about, like, if you guys are gonna try to continue that, like, to respond to other things in future, if there are any things you're currently preparing for or anything like that.
It is Blair, do you want to speak to this?
Well, I was going to say, because Greg, you're kind of on the public education side of things in terms of other activities to do, and it's not just building stuff, although that is kind of our core. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, it's a really good question, Sophie. It's an ongoing conversation that we do have, that we do bring up at our organizing meetings, to try to have at least once weekly. Something that came up last year in the wake of Roe v. Wade getting overturned, and seeing just this wave of, like, anti-abortion legislation being passed the nation over, was trying to see if there's a means by which, like, CHC could work to kind of meet need for, or even, like, at least work with organizations within states afflicted by anti-abortion legislation, try to support people there that need access to either, like,
well, you're talking about distributing mifepristone?
Yes.
Wow.
Not the distribution. I know what you're speaking to. So, but it was something that it's a conversation that we had. And while we haven't yet distributed, like, anything concrete, one of the endeavors that we ended up doing at the end of last year was we hosted a I'm forgetting the name of it, auction, a community auction, where members of the organization and some of our friends brought together like art pieces, poetry, all of this just to kind of raise money to send to I'm forgetting the org, but one of the orgs that that's working in I think it was Texas, and all of that. So it is something that like that we're trying to figure out what how best we can kind of come into these mounting crises, right? What recently the big one recently. I can't even say a big one recently, 'cause it feels like something's happening every day, every week, especially here here stateside. But like what supporting people out in like in what's it called, East Palestine,
Yes, of
but
course.
also then recognizing our own kind of limitation, being a local aid org, and trying to kind of meet mounting needs here. Something that we did recently was we engaged with a house like and maybe you can speak to this a little more, Larry, but the I'm forgetting the name of the org. The Wood Street project. It's a project that works with house people, and helping them helping them like get access to sanitation, like at least warm clothing, all of this. And I think something that a few members of our org did recently was we got sawdust together and created some makeshift like toilets and toiletry and provided toiletries. And it's just been like it's a constant like conversation, like how do and like and this is where we get into the spaces of like forming networks of solidarity with other orgs so that we can help them, particularly as they are as they're better situated to more directly meet needs in that environment. So it's just a constant it's something that we're constantly talking about. And like a very recent conversation that we had last week at one of our org meetings was just discussing mutual aid and reciprocity and the nature of like how when we engage different organizations, how the definition of mutual aid itself can kind of come into question toward in the ways that we react and the way that we engage each other.
Yeah.
So it's just something that there's no easy answer, because it's just a mixture of figuring out what we can materially provide to a given circumstance, and just maximizing like our ability to kind of do such in a way that it feels like we're actually helping people meet need and also empowering community.
Are you familiar with the Four Thieves Vinegar? The Dr. Michael Leufer? There are some anarchist guides on that have to do with the manufacture. Well, to be clear, like safe and scientific manufacture of medications. And they were sharing a lot of information when the Roe v. Wade ban came through, and I thought it might be something that you could feed back to the org and see if there's any interest, to be honest. But I think Larry, you were going to speak on something there. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I was going to kind of bring in what something we try to emphasize is kind of the inventiveness and fun of actually building things and trying out new things. A couple of us are kind of inventor types, and folks have come up with things like we haven't gotten it to a place where we could actually make it something we could do with mutual aid, but like a cross flow heat exchanger or different kinds of air purifiers that aren't just a box fan, maybe using PC fans, which actually there's a group called Clean Air Kits that makes some really excellent ones of those.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, I'll go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying nice. That's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I kind of, to speak to how I got into this, when it was, I think, Thanksgiving 2017 or so, when the sky turned orange and everything got crazy. I was living in a place without central air, and so the only air coming in and out of my place was through the window or out the bathroom vent. And I have terrible allergies, and so I wasn't able to sleep very well. And I just really needed to take care of myself. And the one way I was able to find to do that was to someone pointed out, hey, get a box fan and an air filter. So I went to the hardware store, picked up a box fan, picked up the last MERV 13 air filter that they had in there, which happened to be 20 by 30 size, so it was too big. And I made like a cardboard funnel for it to fit on the back of the fan. And that was how I was able to sleep.
Wow.
And so
What
and
did the filter look like? Did it get like disgusting?
yeah,
With
after
the air?
a couple of months, it got pretty brown gray.
Oh
Very
God.
gross.
I love
I ran it
filtered
basically
dunk porn. I don't know what's wrong with me. I love seeing I have air filters running in my place. I have rabbits and I open them every once in a while. This is probably not an appropriate thing to say at all, but I just really enjoy seeing how much crap was like caught by the filter. Anyways, please go on. Please don't let me
There's a bit
interrupt
of a grim satisfaction to that for sure. I even worked out how, like, if I had one window open slightly and on the upwind side and another window open slightly on the downwind side, and I put the air purifier in front of the window on the upwind side, then as the air came in from outside, it would get filtered and move to the apartment. So I would still get fresh air and filtered air. And that was the best I was able to do.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I've built about a half a dozen different designs at this point. From going from like having little jet vane style things to direct the exhaust to having I don't know if you've heard of a Corsi Rosenthal box. That's a couple of people. Corsi's a UC Davis professor, and Rosenthal is a air filter company manufacturer guy. They came up, they perfected the idea of taking a box fan and making a box out of 4 sides and putting the box fan on top of that box and then cap the bottom with cardboard. And so then air comes in all 4 filters and out the box fan.
Oh, wow.
And so here we
cool.
can talk a little bit about kind of the technical advantages here. One, the box fan works well because it's super cheap. It's only $25. It was $20 when the pandemic started. And it is a large diameter, so you can run it on low and the noise is tolerable and you still get a good amount of airflow. And the problem with a lot of HEPA filter air purifiers, if you buy one for $100 or so, the fan is pretty small and the filtration is really strong. And so, yeah, exactly. That's a Corsi Rosenthal box. You got it.
Yeah.
With a typical cheap HEPA filter, you have to run it at the high power setting to get any substantial airflow through it. And so it's not tolerable noise wise. And we're finding the real limit on performance is noise.
Cool. Yeah, makes sense.
So running a box fan on low is kind of the sweet spot. Even better, like that clean air kits thing I talked about, if you can run PC fans, but the cost goes up a little bit there. That's like $120 for a
PC fans are powerful enough?
Yeah, you have to get there are some that are normal PC fans, and then there are so-called pressure PC fans that are meant to work against pressure resistance.
Okay.
And you need a bunch of them, not just one.
So
interesting.
Grant, you're talking a little bit about you mentioned the DSA when you were talking before, and I can't remember entirely your involvement or CHC's involvement with the DSA, but I think I got the impression that there was kind of shift in your involvement over time, and I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah, at least for me, I do kind of maintain differing relations with CHC and DSA. It's just the nature of what each org wishes to push forward and achieve. Where CHC is a very much a local, to the ground community mutual aid project, where DSA is more this large how do I say, this org that's wishing to push toward being a larger like political project. So both were, at least for me, especially when at the time of my joining, we're kind of meeting two different, for me, ideas of how to get involved, get engaged, make change, and all of that. So while I would say my engagement with either they're specialized in their own right, and they do have overlap. There are other members within CHC who also either are or formerly were members of DSA, and so on and so forth. But it's just like within this greater Bay Area ecosystem of different mutual aid groups, different tenant unions, like labor organizers, and this general political organization. it's like it's just like a difference of like I guess to put it in the way that I've come to kind of understand it within my own education of just a diversity of tactics. And for me, especially the necessity to meet need, to meet people in community where they are is something that the mutual aid organizations, and especially like, and for me especially CHC, serve at the forefront, because this is where this is where people are at like are, how do I say, I guess are at their most vulnerable, particularly within within the Bay. It's also there's also just speaking to the greater history in the Bay Area of like of mutual aid and political struggle. I mean, what this is like this is the birthplace of the Black Panther organization. And while I would not say that DSA or CHC is a replacement for the DPP, that radical fervor of what it means to be organizations that are trying to do anti-capitalist praxis while also meeting need and educating people.
Yeah,
like there is like these axes where like where they meet. So
yeah,
juggling,
I was just oh, sorry, go on.
No, you're good. Go ahead, Sophie.
Oh, I was going to say, I was actually just recommending earlier on the stream this book I'm reading, which is called Revolutionary Anti-Communalism and the Right of Nations to Self-Determination. And a big part of it is a transcript of a conversation that Huey P. Newton had with some Yale students. And it definitely had me thinking of I was just reading some of it earlier today, and it had definitely had me thinking of CHC in particular, in the way, you know, a lot of the BPP practice was always about, I guess people say, think global, act local, right? And I think that's definitely something the CHC could be said to have in common, in the way that you're like helping people locally and then empowering them to help themselves and help each other, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's again part of the conversations that we have within the org toward. And the big one that we always come back to is making mutual aid political. And what does that mean? How do we take it? How do we take it merely from being the active of engaging community, of empowering people to create for themselves and for the people they care about the materials that they need, but also fundamentally kind of breaking through the understanding of the why of like the more systemic whys as to why like state infrastructure under this capitalist model doesn't already meet these needs, right? Like like we were speaking to with the issue with air quality, like even with that, even pending like wildfires and wildfire smoke, air quality especially around the urban centers of the East Bay isn't the greatest. Like here, like you made a really good point of like of the class separation here of people, of the people who can't afford it, the people who can't afford quality air, just kind of getting left to deal with the ravages of the increased risk of asthma, of increased risks of all these sort of respiratory illnesses, and with COVID, increased risk of acquiring a deadly pandemic disease.
Yeah. Can I interject really quickly and say that, to add on what you're saying, the diseases, the ailments that you'll end up getting from exposure to poor air quality are typically chronic ones. They're typically ones that will appear way later, and the etiology of them is very fuzzy, and it can oftentimes be attributed to a number of things, and it's harder to pinpoint it as like specifically because you lived on this block and you didn't have a HEPA filter, right? That's typically not how these illnesses are kind of pinpointed, especially when they appear like, say, 20 years later. So absolutely, yeah, the class divide is even further exacerbated by this this vagueness and being able to point to the source. Whereas, say, was it East Palestine in Ohio? I think a lot of illnesses will be directly, hopefully, given. I know that the climate is it's very oppressive right now in terms of getting information out, but more easily will illnesses be able to be pinpointed to that incidence, because it is so profound. It would be more of like a point exposure versus this like prolonged, really kind of like low grade, but extremely prevalent exposure to poor air quality. So just to tack on to what you're saying, yes, it's important.
Yeah, I think people think that air isn't people just don't think about air. And also obviously just like the idea that air, because of its nature, is not going to be a very local kind of issue. But like, for example, very close to where I live, there's a neighborhood called Newham, which is one of the poorest ones in London. And it's right next to not a rich neighborhood per se, because it's not really a neighborhood people live in, but Canary Wharf is where a vast majority of the financial trading in London happens. And so a lot of people commute through Newham to get to their very, very, very well-paid jobs in Canary Wharf. And there's been a proposal running for the last few years by the Newham Council, which is entirely captured by corruption and the construction lobby, to build a huge tunnel through Newham. And activists are pointing out how this will create a devastating drop in the air quality that will have all these negative outcomes. And you know that it's very clear that the local government doesn't care, because it will primarily affect racialized people and working class people, and they don't care about those people. You know, air is something that you don't. It's what's that type of thing? You know, you don't think about it until it's very seriously wrong. But yeah.
Yes, and that's again, and that's another just massive thing. Like when these things are, and we're probably going to be seeing that slowly unfortunately, with the way that like COVID and general healthcare has been concerned with the epidemic of long COVID. It's not something that's going to come all at once. It's something that over time, as more and more as people have contracted it now, as they age, will these complications develop? Like it's a very navigating circumstances of which the fallout won't be perceived until far later. It's very hard on people to kind of idealize and conceive of in the present. So again, and this is where and this is something that I remember having a conversation about when we were distributing out air purifiers with a gentleman who was talking about how their grandfather due to prolonged exposure to bad air quality out in Oakland started suffering all these respiratory problems, and the fact that the family themselves they couldn't afford a traditional HEPA filter once it came out that the necessity of having this family member being in an environment of which they're getting good quality air became paramount. And it's it's moments like those that at least even for me kind of highlight just the severity of the issue when it's kind of left to be perceived as something that'll be dealt with at a nebulous point of time in the future. It's now it's taking action now to kind of educate people to understand why they should be demanding for better air quality in their neighborhoods and their localities, and again navigating this area of making this process political, of getting people to kind of realize that this is something that they should feel entitled to as per the necessity of pursuing a healthy and full life.
Mhm.
It's hard. It's hard because like we're especially as crises mount, it gets really easy to feel disempowered, and being able to just point out and say, hey, you've built yourself this air purifier. This is something that you did with your own hands, is something that, like, from what I've seen, from what we've talked to with people that we've collaborated with and distributed to, it's something for them that serves as a point of purpose of like, huh, I've never like of I yeah, the aha moment to really like an aha like like a switch flips on as to I didn't realize that this is something that was within my reach. What can we do? How can we what else can we do?
Yeah, and if I could
Yeah.
tie that into kind of societal issues in terms of governance and so forth, where, I mean, we could have had a mass program across the country and the world to improve indoor air quality, where we have federal grants for all kinds of air filtration. And, you know, you do see that in some wealthy places. And there was a piece of that in one of the pieces of legislation that Biden passed. It's just like, you don't really see it universally applied. Like every store should get some help in terms of, you know, improving air filtration. And we should have, like, I think that now the recommended standard for schools in some circles is for 12 room air changes per hour. And to achieve that kind of throughput, it is a difficult thing energy wise, because so far buildings have been optimized for keeping the air in and insulating them, which is not the greatest for indoor air quality. So here we have to change our perspective now. It's like, how do we make that happen? And so we're coming in kind of try on the emergency side of it, being like, okay, you need to be able to breathe at night. You need to be able to breathe safely. I do too. Let's all get together and build these things and make it work. But also there are more systemic ways to go about it that for the most part we aren't. And if it were the case that a concert I could go to had 12 air changes per hour, maybe I'd go. It'd be a lot easier to do, a lot healthier. You get a lot lower transmission of disease in general. You get a lot lower inhalation of air particles in general. Like, it would just be better for everybody. But that's not the societal priority right now.
This is something that really stresses me out in like you said, like in general, even just the transmission of like other diseases. And it really stresses me out. But then I guess it's a product of, society. We live in a society where, my partner, messaged me. She's gone to see her like old grandma this weekend, and she's absolutely terrified. She's like, oh my God, I accidentally went into a Greg's without a mask for like a minute. I'm terrified. And I'm like, you're going to be okay. You were in there for a minute. It's all good. Like, and you came straight back out. It's probably going to be fine. And then she's gone there. And then one of her like older relatives is just like snot coming out of her mouth and like every orifice, like, just sneezing everywhere. Just going, oh, you probably shouldn't come near me. I'm really ill. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, have you learned nothing? Like, I remember one of the best things about COVID, like, is that I learned that if I just keep wearing a mask everywhere, I will never get sick. And it's really, really good. Not getting sick is so good. Like, all the things in this life that suck, that are like avoidable, like, yeah, getting sick is like up there, in it. Like, just don't get sick, and you could just carry on not getting sick by not wearing a mask. And it's just like, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, like, did you not learn? Like, did you not realize how good that was? And I guess it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you don't realize how good something is. Like, for example, you don't realize how good it is to be able to eat without pain until you get a toothache, right? I guess that's like a similar kind of thing. But yeah, I could definitely like, relate to that kind of, sort of, way of thinking, where it's like, oh, well, we can actually just reduce how much ill people get in general, like forget COVID, like, all the airborne illnesses. I think that's a really important thing to talk about.
It does speak to a culture of mutuality, because some friends just came back from a trip to the Philippines, and they said that all kinds of people masked all the time, and it was required on the flight in and so forth, so everybody masked there, but like nobody raised a fuss about it. And then a lot of people were just masking in general. So
Yeah, we need to somehow just, change that mindset I think in Britain it's really hard because in Britain people are just like, oh, things are shit and you just need to deal with it. The stiff upper lip. That's what stiff. If any Americans are watching or anyone from any other country in the world and they always hear the term British stiff upper lip and they don't know what it means, it basically just means don't complain when things are bad. And there is so much wrong with that, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like you should complain when things are bad. And that whole when we're sort of like talking about masks in Britain, you'll get like I guess a mindset of like, oh, you don't have to wear them anymore, mate. And it's like, I know I don't. I also don't have to be a nice person either, but I still do that, And I think like
that.
That's it, isn't it? It's like if someone comes and says, why are you wearing a mask? You don't have to do it anymore. It's like, yeah, I also don't have to like, pay for the items I take from a supermarket. I could just steal them, all these other things. So yeah, how do we actually like, change that mindset? I think that's like a broader part. And I think mutual aid, like what you folks are doing there, I think that is like a really important part of it. And I think that Britain could really take a leaf out of the book of mutual aid orgs in the US because, in terms of like, mutual aid over here, it's virtually unheard of. Like there are some trans mutual aid groups that are really good. But other than that, it's
well, the whole queer community kind of runs implicitly on
Yes.
mutual aid. So it's like,
Right.
it's not even that there are orgs, it's just like a matter of survival. And I think that's something that we see that you could point to with CHC as well, that like as pandemic hit and then and now like the worsening climate crisis, it's like you see organizing happen that just is a response for just people's need to survival to survive rather, right? I had a question about politicization because I think that when I spoke to Joe and Janine, they said a little about reading groups. So are you doing regular reading with people still? Is that a thing?
It is something that okay. So last, I think I don't. Your interview with Janine and Joe was like at the beginning of 2021 or 2022. I think we were reading Walter Rodney at that time. Last year, we read this, The Black Jacobins by CLR James, and I know right now there is an ongoing reading group reading Pedagogy of the Oppressed. So there is still absolutely an endeavor within the organization toward this greater political education of ourselves, so become a better, more informed organizing body. But that's and I mean, and I would say that that's important, right? Ensuring that we have a better understanding of the political precedent that kind of underpins our lived realities. So we do absolutely still engage in like group sessions of political education. We operate our own Slack channel, our Slack group page, and members are encouraged to like post articles toward events that are occurring, or articles toward like what's it called, like again like general political education, like Graver or what have you. So there is absolutely still an ongoing endeavor toward ensuring that, at least for us, we're trying to create.
On the show, we have an ongoing game where Graver gets mentioned and everybody drinks. So cheers, everyone. But please carry on, Grant.
Of course. What can I say? He makes some great writings.
It's usually me who says it, so that's why I needed to interject. I'm usually the one mentioning Graver, but thank you for that.
I should say too, I mean, a good example is if people look at our purpose statement on our website, we had a really, it was the perfect Berkeley experience last year, and we all gathered in a backyard of Berkeley outside and spent all day long arguing about the political theory behind what our purpose should be. And I'm definitely glad to have experienced that for sure.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I love that.
Absolutely. But yeah, that current is absolutely still maintained. Something that we haven't yet done is doing any kind of concentrated reading on the Black Panther Party, even though, like, again, we are like in like the backyard of where that political movement happens. So that's something that we need to.
If you want it in Newton's own words, I gotta recommend again Revolutionary Anti-Communalism and the Right of Nations to Self-Determination. It's a good one.
All right. I will definitely put that up.
Was it by Amy Godala?
Amy Godala. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll definitely make a note. Make a note of that. If not for,
cool.
if hopefully we and hopefully within the or we can get that reading going.
Hell yeah.
So yeah. So hopefully I answered your question there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic to hear. Yeah.
I was talking earlier about the performance of different air purifiers and filtration and so forth. And so you can imagine, like, if you have a really loose filter, like, you remember those old furnace filters that were like blue, just woven plastic fibers? I don't know if you've ever seen those things. They really don't do very much. They catch dust bunnies, and that's about it. So that's the like loose sieve end of things. And then the other end of things, there's a HEPA filter or even finer filters, where they're very high air resistance. They have to have a lot of pleats, and you need a strong fan to push it through. It turns out there's a happy medium for cleaning the air in a room. You actually want to have a lot of throughput. You want to move all of the air in the room and not just a little bit around the air purifier. And so that's why this MERV 13 rating in the US is, and I'm not sure the equivalent overseas, but that's about the right amount of filtration to get a lot of throughput, but also catch most of the particles on the first pass and get the rest on the second or third pass. Getting everything in one pass is not the most critical thing. So if you build your own, or if you're replacing the furnace filter in your air conditioner unit, get a MERV 13, assuming your AC unit can handle it.
Okay.
There you go.
I have 3 HEPA filters that I run. I don't run them on high because it's too loud, like you were saying earlier. So I run them on like the medium, and it's primarily for rabbits stuff, because I care for rabbits. But I don't really have allergies or anything. I wonder how necessary the HEPA filter is. Well, it sounds like MERV filter would probably be a better solution, but it'd be hard to fit to the existing ones. But in the future, I suppose. Still
totally works. And I mean, especially if you got multiple of them and you're running them on a lower speed, then you've still got the throughput you need. So no problem.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, the air goes through the filter and stuff. So, so long
I just
as
wonder if it's just in that little space or bigger than that. So, by the way, chat, it's MERV, spelled M-E, or by everyone, listeners and chat, it's MERV, MERV 13.
There you go. I don't know what the UK equivalent of that would be. I'm really interested in this because one of the chatters on Twitch, my mod Shafiq, basically said that it's hard to get box fans in the UK, but you can get a box fan. It just doesn't.
Is?
Well, I've just had a quick look, and you can get them on Amazon, like, or you could probably get them from like any other kind of non-Pinkerton employing company, if you so desire. But you you
not the absolute devil.
Yeah, you can get them, basically. You can. I guess the wonder is, do they have the throughput? Like, do they have the power to, like, clean the air in the room? But yeah, I guess that's something for UK listeners to have a little look at, or listeners from other places in the world. I think that's really important. One thing that I've noticed in the UK, if you're looking for this stuff, well, particularly on Amazon, the other items that it suggests to you are things in which you can grow vegetables in a tent, namely hydroponics. So if you're wondering, can you get stuff like that, the answer is definitely yes, because there's a lot of that happens in the UK.
You've been growing courgettes in your flat, Neil?
Courgettes in my flat. That's what I've been doing, and that's how you do that. Cool. You do it with big fans and other stuff. So yeah, that's if anyone outside of the US is wondering, yeah, it is possible to do this. But
and speaking of that, you can take a round fan and put a square piece of cardboard on the back with a hole cut in the middle, and voila, do it yourself.
Exactly. That is what do it yourself is all about, really, isn't it? Yeah, no, it's awesome. Yeah, I guess like the main, I just think it's a really, really good organization, and I think that really speaks to a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about on the show, and that, like, generally speaking, material conditions of people are associated with things like, can I afford healthcare, right? And the majority of people can't. And if you are going to prevent people from getting sick, then you are helping them with their material conditions. And then you never know what someone's, I guess, political ideology is when they come to a box building session or whatever. But if they come to a reading group and they're not immediately scared away by David Graeber saying things like, capitalism is bad and all that kind of stuff, then you're basically fighting a lot of misinformation, disinformation. A lot of the stuff that we talk about on the show is like, engaging people with organizing, and we try and get our audience to engage with that kind of organizing as well, in as best as we can. That's like the function of Red Planet. So I guess yeah, that's why I was asking those questions earlier at the start when you first came on, because it's like we want to be telling people how to, not just how to, but like what the benefits are, what the broader benefits are of doing mutual aid. And I guess just like giving people stuff that they need, or like advertising that you're going to just like give people stuff that they need that will like make their lives easier in any kind of capacity. That is what is going to attract people to your organization, and that is what is going to make the world a better place in your local area, kind of thing. And I think if you can like, a lot of this stuff is capacity. Like, that's what I've learned as an activist since I've started doing activists, since I started on this show, is like, you really just have to ask yourself, do I have the time? Like, do I want to do this? Right? I think that's a big thing. If you don't want to do it, that's on you, really. And, you got to unpack that in whatever way works for you. But, the second thing is, do I have the time? And if you do have the time and you do have the desire to do it, like, you can absolutely do it. And I think what you folks are doing in terms of like, because it's healthcare, essentially, it's preventative healthcare, isn't it? It's like, we may not be able to cure you of COVID, we may not be able to cure you of respiratory diseases or other disabilities that could come through COVID, but we can prevent it. And I think that is really, really powerful. And I don't know, I guess that kind of is like just something that's I guess, I don't know if this is, I mean, you obviously wanted to prevent COVID because you started during lockdown and during the start of the pandemic and stuff, but I guess that's probably something that you've learned more and more along the way, and seen people like come to you and been like, I don't know, yeah, this has really changed my outlook on society or disease or whatever, I don't know.
Well, and one thing we're doing too is we're trading labor for money. So of course, if you have the means, buy an air purifier, great. But we're also trying to expand the accessibility of that to people who can't afford it, and have some fun along the way as well. I don't know. I kind of have like my air purifiers are my pets around my place. I've got like 8 different kinds. So coming up with different designs. But yeah, it's like we're finding that it's like we're working on a next generation air purifier that has a lot of cardboard parts to it, and so it's how much of that. We tried cutting some out by hand, which works well and is really a communal experience, but it's a lot of time versus paying to get the parts made, and then you have to fundraise for that and so forth. So kind of trying to find the right trade of being able to work with our hands ourselves versus how much we can fundraise for it.
I also and this is kind of getting back to your point, DJ, as far as like people of like getting people out there. I think there's something to be said of like engaging in any kind of community project with other people who are also there wanting to help other people. There's something to that experience, that communal experience of coming together to do something that is going to better lives, your own or others. That's just, I guess that just kind of makes the experience even more worthwhile. And it was something that like I remember back when I joined, it was something like that, and I think Janine maybe brought it up during her interview with you, Sophie, about just like about just the fact that a lot of people that came to these builds like would speak to the fact that they've been really lonely, like especially with regards to isolating and all of that. The power of people coming together communally to build something for each other and just for for a common good, right? Like it acts as a solve kind of against that entrenched alienation of operating within like capitalist society that does so much to kind of tear away at our ability to socialize and connect with each other. And I know, especially like for me, and like from the conversations we had with volunteers that would come to the build, like a very common through line was just people talking about like this just being an experience that they really appreciated, and being able to kind of come out, talk to other people, work on something that they know that they know is going toward a good, and feeling like that they could have a say in it, that they're directly engaged in providing a good, and not feeling like they're caught in the tides, and just kind of having to go every which way as to whatever comes.
Totally.
That that empowerment, and there's definitely something to be said when you move organizing from a strictly online environment to coming out and kind of being able to meet other leftists and other organizers and other people in your area, that just kind of I guess it may, for lack of a better word, that makes it real. That makes it very real. To know that these people exist, because like it's one thing to see names on a screen; it's another thing to put those put a face to those names. And I would say like that has been throughout every build, throughout all the ups and downs of organizing within THC. That has definitely been something that kind of keeps us grounded and wanting to pursue and further develop this project as we reach out as we reach out to new groups, as we try to figure out new strategies to help people meet needs, kind of bring people together. It's just so important to kind of be able to meet in solidarity, and like makes like we had a member that the way they put it was come together and make cool shit.
Absolutely.
And like that is absolutely like something that like we sound off on, right? Coming together and making cool shit, because being able to act and feel like and not feel what's the word,
alienated.
God, alienated. Thank you. And not feel alienated is it's just a massive panacea to so much, and at least gets people motivated to do more.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that it's an incredibly powerful motivating and organizing force. Like if you think about, the two radical fringes of American politics right now, broadly, the socialists and the fascists, right? And it's like if the American government were to, let's just say, magically disappear or abducted by aliens, like the organizing that fascists do, dressing up in little Trump outfits with their beige khakis and whatever, like and marching around with Captain America shields, like it doesn't feed anyone, it doesn't make anyone healthy, and it certainly doesn't make anyone happy. And like, getting together and making cool shit like certainly does. And it means that people know each other and care for each other and know the people in their neighborhood, and also like has a very practical way in which it makes people, more able to live long term. Like for all the institutional capture and like street militia shit that we see from fasci organizing, like it doesn't do anything when there's a forest fire. It doesn't do anything when there's a flood. And so it doesn't have any like kind of appeal to people when there's like it relies on manufactured crises, like, oh no, there are transgenders or whatever. Like whereas you're responding to very real crises that people, you know, will keep on experiencing and will keep on needing actual solutions to.
I think that that's a really pertinent point as well, because I think a lot of people worry when they hear about things like fascists feeding homeless people and what have you, and that is definitely like a genuine concern. But I think the thing to remember about fascists is that they actually do not care about anyone. Like that's just a fact. And like they will get tired of feeding homeless people. They won't want to do it all the time. They'll be like, this is pointless. Why are we doing this? Let's just like set fire to some stuff. I don't know.
In all the time I've been looking at fascist groups, like in their activities, I've only seen them do that like 1 or 2 times. Like they really, they don't like doing it. Whereas like leftists are like, we care about people and we want people to be okay. So like, you know, it's like, what are you organizing to do? Or like, hey, why are you feeding those people? Oh, we want to red pill them on the secrets of the Aryan identity. Why are you feeding people? Well, we want to feed people. We want them to not be hungry.
I imagine that goes like incredibly poorly as well. They'll be like, here, homeless person, have some food, and they're like, did you know that the white race secure a future, blah blah blah, and they'll be like, what? You know what I mean? They'll be like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't understand. Like, and this food is really dry and it's not seasoned.
Oh my God. Absolutely.
Larry, you sent us a picture of some of your different designs, or a page with some of your different designs, and I was wondering if we could bring that up on the stream. Hopefully the producer can. I think I put it into our. Did I put it into our group chat? I hope so. I did put it into a group chat. Did you want to maybe tell us a little bit about some of the different design stuff? Because I get the feeling you're like you'd be excited to nerd out about this, and I would like to see that if you would.
Oh sure, yeah. I mean, there's kind of a spectrum of how much work you put into it versus how nice it looks and things like that. One thing I found that if you just technically speaking, if you use the filters as the structure, like you build the box with the filters, that's much faster and easier than building essentially building an air purifier from scratch and then attaching filters to it.
That makes sense.
So the one called Flow Easel, when we get to that one, is the one we're working on now, where it's kind of a compromise between those two approaches. But yeah, the downside of building the structure out of the filters is that then, you know, in 6 months or 9 months when the filters are gray and gross, you got to rip all that apart.
Of course, yeah.
Whereas if you build something where you can just drop the filters on. And so the first generation design that another person at Common Humanity Collective came up with, the idea was to make the replacement super easy. So our basic design, if you look on our website, is just a box fan. The filter's got the corners taped off to make sure all the flow goes through the filter. It's rubber banded on. So all you got to do is get a new filter, tape the corners off, and rubber band it back on.
Nice. Is that DIY Air Cleaner 1?
That's the one.
I was guessing by it being the first one. Yeah.
That was the design I was talking about earlier when it was.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, nice, that's the one on the lower right there.
Cool.
That was pretty fun. So the one on the lower left is one where I put way too much work into it, and it's still a piece of cardboard. So, yeah, exactly. And then
cabinet. So what did you change? What was the thought behind that one? Or
this was an earlier one where I thought, like, okay, I'm going to make a box that I'm going to use for a long time, and make the filters really easy to replace. So, and it's fairly compact. One thing is, like, with the Corsi Rosenthal box, you've got this huge 20-inch by 20-inch by like 25-inch thing, and it's empty inside. It's just taking up space. So it was really effective, and it works great for like classrooms and things like that. But it's a bit much for just having in your bedroom or something.
Right.
And I wonder, in terms of, I guess, like, you know, other, because you don't need to like have this hanging out of the window or anything. You just need to have this in your gaff, right? Yeah. And I wonder as well, like, you know, is the air that comes out like cool? Can you like make it cool to, because I'm just thinking about like, summer and stuff. Yeah, I don't know what the applications of that are in terms of heat and stuff.
It's a good question. I mean, if you think about it systemically, like that is what goes. It's why it's called a furnace filter, right?
Right.
These things go on your AC or furnace or so forth. But no, these are just to circulate air. So
Okay.
you can use them. I mean, you can use them to make a little bit of a breeze, like a normal fan would. But yeah, there's no active heating or cooling.
Fair
but
enough.
if you look at the one called Flow Easel, I think it's near the top.
Top left, yeah, Flow Easel.
Yeah, that's the one we're working on now, where it's this compromise where we actually use the box that the fan came in as the brown part.
So that's very clever.
Materials. And then the nozzle helps direct the flow across the room and also quiets it. So you get better circulation all throughout the room and a little bit less noise. And then it's got the filter just drops into place and you just tape it on. So it makes it really easy. So there are all kinds of improvements went into this thing. But it is also more work. So it takes about 3 hours to assemble or so.
Right.
Well, 3 hours is still pretty good, it might be an afternoon, but I think clean air is, I think that's the question that people have to ask themselves if they're thinking about the amount of time that it might make to like make one of these, like what price would you put on clean air? What price would you put on, preventing yourself from getting diseases and, looking after your family, keeping your family safe? And I would work for a lot longer than 3 hours to do that,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting on our builds, we've taken a couple approaches too, because the easy thing to do is to make an assembly line. So that is more efficient once you've got it, like all the procedures cleaned up and everybody knows what they're doing and it's running like a well-oiled machine. But some other times we've done it as a piecework project, where you take the entire thing from start to finish, you put every piece together of one air purifier that you've made, and there's kind of a neat kind of sense of investment in it that comes out of that. And it's like, hey, I put this one together from start to finish. So it's kind of fun. But I'd kind of like to encourage that, but we try some of both different models to try out different ways of just seeing how it feels.
Can I just say that these are they're really pretty. They look like art. Like they're like kind of like cool, like different like foldy shapes, and like I don't know, it's like really aesthetically pleasing to see these.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they're really nice
my
to look at,
eyes are
actually.
enjoying it.
And I think as well, because you mentioned that earlier, I can't remember if it was you, Larry, or you, Grant, but like, the aesthetics of it or whatever, like I think, if you've got like, if you are like an arty person, if you do like decorating stuff, like there's an opportunity to do that, because you just basically have like a lot of cardboard there, that you could put whatever you want in it. You could cover it in stickers, you could cover it in Red Planet stickers.
You say cardboard?
Cardboard.
Hey,
Yeah, look at what she's got there. Listen,
My little bunny
listeners.
village for the bunnies.
She's made a little company town for the bunnies.
Wow.
That was Amazon packaging.
I am their overlord. That's right.
They're gonna
No,
unionize
I'm
against
not.
you, Kara.
That's wrong. That's not
Oh, yeah,
vegan.
and take a look at CHC's social media. You'll see some pictures from our last build with Flow Easels, where we did a bunch of decorating at the end. I think it's actually important. It's pretty fun,
Awesome.
much more welcoming, and something that we're trying to make something that's nice to have in somebody's living room. So
Nice, cool.
Yeah.
I think that is the fundamental thing about it, is that it's like, this is a very like functional item to have. It's a functional machine to have, but people like their functional things to look nice as well. I mean, I don't know how much decorating people do with an oven, for example, but people do it, don't they? So yeah, I think that's definitely a big part of it.
We do pay a lot more attention to design these days. It's not just a piece of sheet metal anymore. It's something designerly thing with nice lines to it. Totally.
Before we do move on to the Q&A, I'm wondering, because I think that a lot of CHC's work has been neighborhood focused in a way that works with people who are housed, but you obviously across America, and I think in the West Coast, some places especially, there is a homelessness crisis. So like, is there anything you do with houseless people?
There's the kind of camp toilet build that we've done recently, that Grant was to earlier, basically taking buckets and sawdust and
Oh,
And,
that, of course. I'm sorry.
and a pipe insulation to make it a little more comfortable. We also have distributed some of our air purifiers to homeless shelters in terms of like when the air quality is poor and things like that. So
Excellent.
There was also like because I'm sure you saw well, no, I'm sure but the past month or so here in California we've had a bunch of massive storms that particularly afflicted some neighborhoods worse than others when it came to flooding. So there were makeshift projects set up to kind of get people who were most affected by the flooding into like into some of these shelters. And during that time, like CHC went ahead and donated a good, like, distributed out a bunch of air purifiers to some of the local shelters within within Oakland, and maybe there's a few in SF, but I know for sure that they distributed in Oakland.
That's lovely. Yeah. Okay, cool. Are we going to move on to Q&A now, or any other questions from the hosts?
I'm pretty happy with everything that's going on here.
I have a first question here from Boothby the Beloved.
I want to ask this one actually.
Oh, okay, go ahead then.
So this is from Boothby the Beloved, and I actually had this thought myself, so that's why I want to ask the question. Any thoughts on helpful critiques for our more individualist leftist friends, i.e. folks against contributing to movements or deeper involvement in struggle? And the reason why I thought of this question is when you were talking about how you could make something with your own two hands, and that's really empowering. There's that like right-wing libertarian slant to that, which is like, I don't need anyone then. I can just do everything myself, and I don't have to actually like meet my neighbors or build community or acknowledge my vulnerabilities as just a singular entity in a world, you know? So do you, how do you go about, or do you have any experience like trying to talk to these people and trying to both empower them into being able to like, you know, do stuff themselves, but also to, you know, contribute to a larger, bigger thing?
That is a really good question. I will do my best to take a crack at it. And Lou, if you want to also contribute, please go ahead. Yeah, I would say like one of the biggest things is just trying to fully acknowledge the fact that like to put it blatantly, we live in a society, right?
We do.
We do.
It's true, chat.
Right? And in that, everyone contributes to a multitude of things that enable people to kind of live their day-to-day lives, even if you don't immediately see it. If all the plumbers suddenly stop doing doing their job, like in your workplace, you'll notice.
Or if all the janitors don't show up, it becomes Twitch headquarters. Or Twitter headquarters, excuse me, Twitter headquarters. Anyways, go on, please go on.
All of that. So this mindset of the hyper individual who can prepare and do everything on their own is fundamentally, when you really observe the way that you acquire like your goods and services and all of that, it doesn't exist. If you go off to like live in some property out of the woods that's still connected to like a source of electricity, like you're still you are still acting on the impetus of multiples of thousands of people who kind of even enabled your ability to conceive of doing something like that. Like, did you make the generator yourself? No, you probably didn't.
Could you make it if you were given could you make it yourself? No, you probably wouldn't know where to start. Right, exactly.
So it's kind of really breaking through these notions of like of acknowledging that like a lot of things work together to enable the prosperity of individuals. And when we engage like in these projects, in these mutual aid projects, as a collective, as a group, we're doing something that humans have been doing for forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are like at our base, like we're social animals. We a lot comes from like working community and working together in order to overcome any kind of adversity or hardship. And it's really recognizing again, like it takes a village. It takes a village to meet need. Certainly you can make the case to try to go out on your prepper individualist thing. You'll like and meaningfully you'll go a distance, but when you work together in solidarity and community with other people who are also similarly empowered to want to make a change to better their lives, even at the base of wanting to better their own condition, like when multiple people come together to engage in common struggle, the outcomes of what can be done, of what can be achieved is just exponentially greater.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say like that's kind of where, at least when a conversation of this type does arise. I don't think it's happened like at a build. I'd imagine the people who come to the builds that we put on are people already kind of in a mindset of acknowledging the like what like
Mm-hmm.
of what people can do when they come together to work at something.
Mm-hmm.
But so this would be more I guess advice, or at least my insights toward like talking to like other people, whether they be family members, colleagues, etc., who are operating in this mindset of hyper individualism. Like that doesn't, like, if so long as you're an individual, especially living in a society of like prospered by multiple people working like working and moving, this doesn't exist. They're like, you aren't moving as this soul as the soul shaker and mover of your destiny. Like this is this has always been a collaborative effort. Simply shunting your eyes to it isn't enough to say that, oh, if I can do this for myself, anyone can. It's like, no.
Yeah, and to kind of bring that to a specific experience at one of our street builds, like someone came up who, like myself, did their own air purifiers and started talking excitedly about it and so forth. And I gave them my card, but there was no follow-up. And so I think the lesson there was communicate, like make sure I message him or he messages me on the spot and keep the conversation going. And it is something I struggle with, because there's also a little bit of a, like, everybody wants to do their own design, which is great. And I'd like to try to have a little humility and be like, no, actually, this design is what we're building right now. It's what we kind of got started, and let's roll with this for now. We can improve upon, but really have the humility to be like, this is a group project, and we're trying to move this all forward together.
Definitely.
Well, we regularly try to tear down our listeners, so I don't think they have any issues with humility.
So Moss Leica has asked, what have Grant or Larry seen in their organizing that gives them the most hope for the future?
Great question.
Oh man, Larry, do you want to start this one off?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's people's openness to this kind of thing. I mean, it's kind of wild that on our last build, we had some folks who were regulars, some folks who came back who we hadn't seen in a while, which was really cool. We had some completely new people, and they were just willing to jump in and build stuff. Be like, oh yeah, how do you do this? What's this step about? And just a very open and engaging attitude of people was really encouraging. Yeah, I definitely appreciated that.
I'd say for me, I would say it's kind of been a through line in some of the ways I've been responding to the questions that y'all presented today and the conversation that we had. But like just coming together with other like-minded people who want to see the world made better, and the capacity that we can achieve that, has kind of been the biggest solve to any kind of doomerist or black pilled a mode of thinking. And that again, that isn't to say that like I am fully immune to that. I don't think anyone is, but being able to operate with other like-minded people who are working there, who are working to try to make the world a better place, and hopefully and try to, at least within our localities, push toward better, has been a huge way of kind of helping me keep an optimistic outlook toward the endeavors that people can do when they come together and they continue to care.
Yeah, I mean, we truly are more than the sum of our parts. And when you see that in action, I think it's the thing I'm always saying is like, we think that there are one-sided relationships between agents of this, agents of the system and people. But when people work together, you see that they can actually be turned around. You can actually evict your landlord if they're a shitty landlord. You can actually fire your boss. You can like arrest the police if they're doing fucked up shit. As if you are working together. And it's just shit that you don't believe could possibly happen until you see it happen.
And the next question is from Kiri Magic in the YouTube chat. Is there any way to make smaller, portable, maybe battery-powered air filters that could work for tents? I'm mainly thinking of unhoused people, as I know a lot of people are in California.
Yeah,
Larry.
Yeah. And on top of that, even for folks who have houses, if their power goes out, these you're kind of out of luck, and the air is still full of smoke. But yeah, for houseless people, for sure, it's like because folks will charge things up on solar power or something like that. Some of these there, you can absolutely scale this down. There are ways, if you carefully fold the filter into sections, you can make a little tower out of it with a PC fan and a power adapter, and it's possible to do. I haven't built any myself. I don't know if there are kits for that kind of thing. But yeah, totally, it's entirely within the realm of possibility. I just don't have a design for you yet.
Cool. I think that's a good answer. Anyway, sorry, go on, Larry. You're gonna.
Oh no, you can buy such things, but they're commercial products. So yeah.
Of course, yeah, and I think the point of what Kiri was asking was like the reason that you make air filters yourself, because then it costs less money.
Yeah, so there is a small filter that you fold up and a PC fan and some kind of battery adapter for that.
There you go. Yeah, if you can figure out how to smush them together, I guess.
Yes, that's the hard part.
The next one is from B-Rat, and B-Rat says, are they planning on ever manufacturing the filters themselves?
Ooh, that's an interesting thought. People have kicked around ideas for that kind of thing. And actually, one thing that pains me is that these are melt-blown plastic, and they are not reusable and not recyclable. So that's part of how they work. There are 4 different ways it filters. It filters like a sieve. It filters just in terms of particles hitting the fibers. It filters by just if they're little tiny particles, the Brownian motion of the particles, and then it filters by electrostatic. So the electrostatic part's really important. And so how to do that in a way that's that you either build yourself or is reusable or recyclable is pretty difficult. So we don't really have the capacity to do that kind of thing. It is we are getting manufactured materials and reusing them for our own purposes. So I'm not sure, we're not going to be able to weave a high efficiency air filter. And I'm not sure there's a good answer for that, but something that would be at least more ecologically sound would be a much needed improvement.
Does someone want to read the next one?
Yeah, I'll ask it. It's from Prince Infidel. Have you been surveilled or infiltrated during your work? I guess to your knowledge.
We do not know. We do not know. But we have public facing social media accounts. Most of our pictures are on there. So what was it? Edward Snowden pretty much revealed that pretty much every citizen in the United States is being surveilled to some capacity. I think recently I remember reading something about how the YouTuber Second Thought found out that he had a massive, when he asked about his file he had a massive file. So we don't know, but we're gonna keep doing what we're doing. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, to co-sign that, like Grant's right to say everyone is being surveilled, and I think that if you're doing any kind of leftist organizing, like your org is being surveilled, like that's a kind of a foregone conclusion. But the big question is kind of like, the question isn't so much like, are you being surveilled, as being like whether you're being surveilled passively or actively. Like the size of both the size of both the NSA itself and also of like the deployment of its technological and quite passive surveillance is unthinkably huge. And it does so much stuff as a matter of course, just processing information and kind of filing it away almost automatically. Whether they actually consider you to be some kind of threat, that's a very different question, I think.
Yeah, I've never seen anything that would be along the lines of a provocateur or an instigator or something like that. So
yeah, I guess I think that's a good thing, obviously, but I also, it's like, yeah, you have to ask, like, you know, oh God, how would they? I know that cops try and break up food not bombs meetings.
I was about to say that too. Yeah.
Yeah, big. I was thinking, like, how the fuck do you justify in any way? Yeah, I know.
The most well-intentioned, obviously good things. If you're an org, cops, you're surveilled, and cops are going to try to bust you.
Yeah. It's so fucked.
Well, yeah,
so
we had I forget if it was in Oakland or Berkeley, but we had during the big Black Lives Matter protests in 2019, a undercover cop was outed within the protest and then pulled a gun on everybody around him. So yeah, stuff does happen like that.
We even had an episode about how to spot an undercover cop at a protest.
We did.
It's probably one of those ones that we're going to repeat over a few times because it's like kind of worth recycling the information. I'm going to go to the next question, which is from B-Rat, and says, what's one thing they would like to manufacture that would have a big impact on people's lives, but so far haven't been able to for whatever reason?
Ooh, oh my gosh, that's a really good question. And I think this kind of goes back toward what I mentioned about kind of the ongoing conversations as to what we can do to kind of meet needs. I know something that, and Larry, I think you remember when we had that massive brainstorming meeting, where we were putting sticky notes and everything up. There was something that came up of so in the same vein of like air, like getting clean air, like tracking mold, being and treating that. How like trying to figure out a way of like doing that as a mutual aid project. That's something I remember. I specifically remember thinking that was really cool because like mold can be a very silent killer. It's not always obvious that there's a mold problem within a unit or a home until like there are active people are actively showing symptoms that something is like something's wrong with the air. So I would say I would like to a small scale, I would say some kind of means of tracking, of detecting and dealing with like mold in an environment was something that that we brought up. We just kind of weren't able to figure out a way of tackling it.
Yeah, and even within the air purifiers themselves, I mean, we're struggling with how best to scale up if we wanted to. Like, there's the organizational aspect of like, do we really want to have a government grant, or is that a good thing, or should we be figuring something out, other way of operating, or we just continue with our own little fundraising? And then there's the aspect of just the practicalities of making this stuff. It's like we can get custom cut cardboard parts, but that's pretty expensive. So ideally we'd want to stamp cut these things, but a stamping tool is going to be maybe $10,000. You need a couple thousand, a volume of several thousand units before it starts to pay off. So it is a tricky question.
I think that's a really awesome one as well. Like the mold thing is a huge thing for houses in Britain. It's one of the main things that we come across in
Yeah,
Greater
because it's
Manchester
so humid
tenants
and
Union.
cold here.
It's ridiculous how many houses have got black mold, which literally killed, a toddler like 2 years ago in social housing. And it's like, yeah, if there is a way that mutual aid, I mean, ideally these fucking housing associations shouldn't be putting people in houses with mold. However, if we have to empower ourselves to actually figure out how to rid properties of mold, then so be it, right? But I think that's a really good thing to think about for sure. Shall I read the next one? It is from Dice Goblin, and Dice Goblin says, is CHC active in the South Bay, or is it mostly just Oakland and San Francisco?
Yeah, we are not active in the South. I guess, we're not heavily active in the South Bay, so I'm guessing that's. And correct me if I'm wrong, Larry. That's like San Jose, Fremont, Union City, that kind of area, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Typically.
mean, we did attend a 4-H event in Hayward recently. And we have done stuff in the Central Valley. We're talking to some folks up in Napa, so we do reach out to other groups. But our main operations are in Oakland and Berkeley.
Gotcha. I think
well, in
that
that case,
it. Yeah,
we're through the questions, and I guess we just want to ask a couple more things. One is that we like to give our listeners some homework, because they're little swats, and they love when they get assignments from class. So we tend to ask people, is there like a next thing that you would like to tell people to do after hearing about your org? This is besides like checking out the website or whatever like that. Like we had a guest on once who was from Queer Care, who's like a first aid and like support network org, and she told everyone to go and do some kind of reproductive labor within their like org. So be the one at the union meeting doing the washing up or whatever. That's the kind of homework that we sometimes set. We've also told people to join unions. We've also told people to go around their neighborhood and imagine how it would look different under like their utopian perfect world and stuff like this. So do you have any ideas of homework for the chat?
Yeah. I get Larry. Oh yeah, I'll go. Then Larry can kind of give his input. For me, I would say like the biggest homework is look into your locality, look into your area, and see if there are any ongoing mutual aid efforts. If there aren't, like go out, talk to people, try to figure out what a common problem is, and see if through through collaboration, or just start starting off on your own, figuring out what means we can kind of what means that we can start on to kind of endeavor to kind of do something within your own within your own community. Just trying to put yourself in a position as to try to make the act of engaging in mutual aid a more active process, versus being something that you've just heard about now. Trying to go out there and actively see what are ways that I can I can both engage with people around me to kind of improve and meet needs, if not even within your community, even needs at home. It starts small. Besides that, yeah, I think that's the big one. Just getting out there, doing something. I think the hardest part for any kind of organizing or engage or endeavor is just getting out there and starting. So starting small within your home and going out from there. I think that's that. I think that's like my major thing I would hope to impart on the listeners of this episode. It's just to get out there and do something. Do something that kind of helps you kind of see problems and try and work on and first work on trying to actionably start the process to just improving a system, whether that be at home, again, your community, and so on and so forth. The places, like, again, CHC started as a very small thing of a bunch of Berkeley students saying, hey, there's a hand sanitizer shortage. How can we endeavor to like meet this need? And we've been going, and since then, like, we've continued to bring on like-minded people, and have been a project that have consistently persisted for like the past 3 years.
Cool. Larry?
Yeah. Yeah, and building on that, I would say to pick one thing and run with it. Could be joining a local mutual aid org. The more local, the better. You could throw a block party and meet your neighbors. Perhaps even bring along a sign-up sheet and get everybody talking to each other. And maybe even with a little bit of purpose, maybe not the first time. But yeah, just try to meet locally. That's one thing I've been challenged by, is like mutual aid. To make it actually mutual, it's got to be among people you get to know well. So and
That's smart.
Specific to air quality, one thing that's good to look for is if you can check out what the story is with your local schools and see if they're taking measures to improve the air quality in the schools. And if they're not, that can be a policy activism thing, or it can be building some air purifiers and donating them to schools, or getting some people together to do that kind of thing. Would be pretty cool to do. So just a couple ideas.
And we should say explicitly, like, on our website, we do like we do have the instructions for how to make your own air purifier. So it's all
Wow.
there. Yeah.
Cool.
So
Okay.
like, again, like, this
Fantastic.
isn't something that we want just like it's just CHC doing. We want to make sure that what we're doing is something that that we can give the tools to other people to kind of endeavor and engage in this project themselves, whether that be just for their own families, for their own individual needs, or to start their own projects.
Mm-hmm. So your websites that you've given us are commonhumanitycollective.org and cohesivecontrivances.net, which I think that, Larry, is that your page specifically?
That's my personal site. Yeah.
Cool. Where we're talking about all the different air purifier designs we saw earlier. So if listeners want to check out those, once again, they're commonhumanitycollective.org and cohesivecontrivances.net, which great name. But yeah, the other question that I had to finish off was just, are there any other orgs that you want to shout out? Any people you think are doing good work and you want to give a mention to?
Oh my gosh. Why I did kind of mention them. Bay Area Mutual Aid. Like, even though it's a lot smaller now, like that was and still is an awesome source of like different groups coming together to try to meet need. There's the Ella Baker Project, which is another kind of local group that we've done work with in Oakland. That particularly meets needs for like a Latin community in that area. And then I think we also mentioned that the Wood Street Commons Project, which does their part to kind of serve unhoused people. So yeah, those are some local ones. Of course, also, like, I will kind of give a small shout out to like the DSA, because even for being a larger umbrella org, they do attempt to try to kind of empower burgeoning leftists into some kind of greater leftist organizing structure, and just kind of trying to and really serving as a great launching point for people to be able to see that, hey, whoa, other leftists are real out, and like this isn't just something that I stumbled into on my lonesome. So yeah, those would be some names I have to shout out.
Yeah, and we'd be remiss if not to ask for donations to CHC are always welcome. Tell your friends. There's another outfit, a one-person operation called Mask Oakland. That's also great to donate to. They do a lot of work.
Excellent. Absolutely give money to CHC. I think that's a great idea. Yeah, Fantastic. Oh, thank you so much for coming on. Like, I really think that it's really been educational. Like, I think that this is something that is, air purification, COVID, and of course, like, just in general diseases, I think is something that's not really at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. So thanks for coming on and reminding us that preventing is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That's what they say, isn't it? So yeah, and thanks for all the awesome work that you do.
Yep. Thank you, Larry and Grant.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks
so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
See you later.
Cool.
All right, bye.
And
So
chat.
what's the order we do things in now? What do we want to tell chat? It's not me scrolling through the show notes to check that we don't want to talk about the Patreon now.
That's right. That's what we do now.
Hey, Mule, you want to tell me about that Patreon?
I'll tell you about that Patreon, Sophie, and I'll tell everybody listening at home as well. We are a show, and we have a producer. And,
We're a show?
Oh, yeah, I know. It's hard to believe, isn't it?
This is the section where Mule does all the work and I try to throw him off.
Which she knows is very easy because that is who I am. It's how my brain works. But yeah, we are a show and we do stuff and really cool stuff like you've just witnessed if you've been watching, listening. And we have to fund that show. We do have to fund it. We have a producer. He's a lovely lad. He's called Conrad and he's been doing everything. He's been keeping the stream alive behind the scenes. You might have noticed we had a little bit of technical difficulties, but you probably didn't because he's really good at doing all that stuff.
You know why
and
that
also,
is though? We made Conrad run on a treadmill to power the stream, and I think he may have just passed out. Yeah,
a couple of times there. But
So,
we
do better,
luckily
Conrad.
because the Patreon is going so well, we were able to buy a small car battery, and we just zap him when he passes out, so he gets back up again.
What we need is we need more money to be able to buy bigger car batteries.
That's
to give
true. Yeah,
Conrad more of an electric shock. This is a joke. This is sarcasm. We do not torture our producer
for legal purposes.
Yes, for legal purposes, we don't do that. We are not Guantanamo Bay. Anyway, yeah. So basically, we actually give Conrad money so that he could live and survive, which is nice, isn't it? And we also would very much like to give other people money so that they can live and survive. And that other person is an editor. And it would be really, really cool if, we could actually get an editor for Red Planet, because that would mean that we would be able to have all sorts of kind of cool little clips. We might get like a Red Planet clips channel on YouTube or something like that, where there's like clips of us and our most based moments and our guests saying the most based things, and that will make people go, wow, I didn't want to watch this long form tedious content before, but I've got a small attention span. I'm a baby Gen Z Zoomer, and now I want to watch all of it because I've watched this little TikTok of this show.
A little cheeky TikTok.
That's right, Kira, a little cheeky TikTok like that. Say it like that. For those of you listening at home, she's cringing because of how good that voice was. I
have to say, I need to also say, person with the shortest attention span I personally know, who is a millennial, makes it about Gen Z somehow.
Listen, there is a war that's going on. There's a war that's going on between Gen Z and millennials that I don't really understand. I don't know why it exists, but I'm taking part in it. No, I have the worst attention span and I'm projecting entirely. You can become a patron too by going to patreon.com/red_planet. And you should do that right now. And the first tier that is a part of that is Sprite Mode. And Sprite Mode, that is when you get started with your support for Red Planet by becoming a Sprite. Benefits include the sacred and forbidden knowledge that you're helping the Red Planet team, early access to VODs, access to the Red Planet Discord, where we talk about really, really base cool stuff. And that is £2 a month, aka $2.50 a month. And Tim is not here.
No, $2 a month.
Oh, is it $2 a month? That's my bad. It's $2 a month. It's £2 a month. It's really good to do that. And there's another tier that's above that.
And that tier is called Goblin Mode.
It is. Sophie, what's that?
Well, it's £9.50 or it's $10, which means that, let me just check how far we'd have to go to get to that editor goal, about 350 quid. So if there were just like 35 goblins, if anyone happens to know 35 goblins personally, you're very lucky, and I hope you know that. But also, please direct those 35 goblins to our Patreon, because we could hit our goal if we just got, just a few more goblins. Everyone loves a goblin. We all get a little goblin mode from time to time. Complete your gobology by going goblin mode with everything from sprite mode, plus a pack of cool Red Planet stickers for you to stick in legal places and only places like that. Access to exclusive Red Planet Discord hangouts. The next Red Planet Discord hangout, we haven't booked the date yet. We've been doing our little scheduling thing, but we do know what we're doing, which is, as much as it might seem otherwise, we do know what we're doing. Which is we're going to be watching an episode of Star Trek TNG and then another episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So it should be a fun little hangout. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm very excited.
But what about if you had even more money than a goblin? What would that make you, Kira?
Well, that would make you a beast belonging to the beast mode at $20 a month, or some amount of English money.
I'll tell you how much that is, Kira.
Why do you
I'll tell you.
close the window?
I'll tell you, it's 19 pounds.
19?
19 British pounds quids.
Okay, 19 quids or $20 a month. Holy shit. Are you actually going to go beast mode? Well, then we can offer you all the stuff from the lower tiers and pin badges. Yep, pin badges. Wear your excellent new Red Planet pin badge literally everywhere. It is completely cool and good to do. Wow. But what if you wanted to go even harder? What if you are a sicko?
Well, then that would mean that you would be paying £94 a month or $100 a month, or whatever it is in your locale. The equivalent. You do the maths. I'm not going to. I've got dyscalculia. Don't be ableist. If you support us this much, we can only reasonably offer you all the stuff from the lower tiers, plus a very special thank you message at the end of every stream, which looks like this. Thank you, JBP, for being our sicko. Thank you so much. And yeah, that is the Patreon, and you should give us money. Like I said, and like Sophie said earlier, we are very close to hitting our goal. It's £884 a month, which I believe is $1,000 or $900 a month. I'm not entirely sure. In order to get an editor, and yeah, there will be just so many good stuff. We could not only have little what?
I need to know something.
What do you need to know, Sophie?
Where can people find you on the internet?
I'm glad you asked, but Kira is fucking dying laughing.
What's him off? Mule!
Listen, I'm just hyped for the planning meeting. I just want to get to that goddamn planning right now.
Okay, cool. So I'm glad you asked, Sophie. You can find me at linktree.ee/DJ Mule. All of my links are there. Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and the most important one, Patreon. And that is the most important one because I have, yes, finally finished my next video. It is now available for, well, it's kind of a rough cut. It's not really a rough cut because I'm not really going to cut anything else out of it, but I've not really done all the things that I want to do with it to make it look really, really good. But it is there if you are a enlightened socialist here or above to actually watch now. You can watch my next video. It will be released on the YouTube channel next Sunday. It's going to premiere, I think, around 11 a.m. next Sunday, I'm thinking. And yeah, it'll be really, really cool. It's about an anime/manga called Berserk and how it is actually queer and polyamorous, and not just queer and polyamorous, but it's also a love story. But yeah, that's what the video is about. You should go there and give me money. It's really, really good. And also, Sophie, where can people find you? That's another question.
What a good question. Most days, people can find me tending to my little homegrown mushroom setup in my spare room in a little tent with my light and my squirty bottle and my reishis and my lion's mane. But online is a different question. If you want to see those little shroomy guys. I've actually been collecting time lapses. I have a very mushroom heavy video coming up where the visuals is all going to be mushrooms the whole way through. Not the whole way through, but a lot of the way through. It's very mushroom heavy, like I said. And when that's ready, it's going to be on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Sophie from Mars. When it's been on my Patreon for a little bit, and all my patrons have had a chance to look at it, it's going to be on my YouTube channel, which is also Sophie from Mars on YouTube. I'll be talking a little bit about it on Twitter, which is twitter.com/Sophie_FRM_Mars. I'll probably do some editing streams about it on twitch.tv/Sophie_FRM_Mars. But you can find all of my links at linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars, all one word. And you can also just give me money directly there. If you just like feel like some kind of little worthless little worm and you want to send money to a hot girl to make yourself feel better, just go onto linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars and do your shameful deed and then leave. Speaking of which, Kira, go.
Yeah. Speaking of shameful deeds, hi, you can find all of my shameful links, winky face, wink, wink, and my link tree.
Close brackets.
on my link tree. If you don't know how to find Linktree, just type Linktree and then Kira Chats into Google. I'm sure it'll show up, but it's linktr.ee/Kira Chats. But just go on my Twitter, twitter.com/Kira Chats. It's also available there. You can find my Twitch, twitch.tv/Kira Chats. My Discord, discord.gg/Kira Chats. It's all Kira Chats. But you want to definitely check out my link tree because there's some really exciting links there. Wink. Wink.
Oh, mama. Oh, woof, woof. That's right.
But yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Oh yeah, and tomorrow I'll be having my friend Aranok on to discuss her latest video. We're gonna be doing like a watch party like Sophie and I had similarly the other day. So if you're a fan of Aranok, make sure to tune in. That's happening tomorrow on my Twitch channel.
I see.
Yeah. So thank you so much, chat, for being here, for joining us. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We appreciate all of you. And
just before we go, let's not forget our comrade who is not here, the wonderful Conquest of Dread, Sweet Tim, the poor bean. He completely forgot that daylight savings had not changed for New Zealand and he missed the stream. But it's okay. It's okay because you can find him and his content at Conquest of Dread on YouTube, and you can also get him at Dread Conquest on Twitter. Make sure you go and show Tim some love because he's a lovely bloody lad. Anyway, what were you saying about the show ending?
No, that I don't really have anything else to say.
Okay, that's the end of the show.
Goodbye,
everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye. Goodbye, chat. Let's not forget fingies. Let's not forget fingies.
Will you remember
Bye.
me?
Bye.